The Honorable, the Speaker.
Almighty God, we give thanks to you, the creator of the universe, and humbly beseech you to direct and prosper the deliberations of the members of this house here assembled for the advancement of your glory and the trust and welfare of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Grant that peace and happiness, truth and justice may be established among us for all generations. Amen. Amen. Namaste.
Oath or affirmation, announcements by the Speaker.
Honourable members, Ms. Marlene MacDonald, MP, member for Port of Spain South, has asked to be excused from today's sitting of the House. The leave which the member seeks is granted.
Introduction of bills. The Motor Vehicles and Road Traffic Amendment No. 2 Bill 2017, presented by the Attorney General. Public Business, Government Business, Bill second reading.
Honourable members, the debate on the second reading of the following bill, which was in progress when the House adjourned on Friday, October 6, 2017, will be resumed. A bill entitled An Act to Provide for the Service of Trinidad and Tobago for the financial year ending on the 30th day of September 2018. The members who have already contributed are as follows. 1. Honourable Colum Ember, MP. Honourable Kamla Prasad Bisessa, SC, MP. Honourable Stuart Young, MP. Ms. Ramona Ramdial, MP. Honourable Dr. Lovell Francis, MP. Dr. Lakram Bodo, MP. Honourable Darrell Smith, MP. Honourable Anthony Garcia, MP. Member for Lopino, Bonia West.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, I rise in support of the national budget presented by the Minister of Finance and to share the government's priorities and perspectives with respect to social development in fiscal 2018. At this point, Madam Speaker, I am compelled to express special thanks to the Minister of Finance on behalf of myself, the more than 170,000 social services grant recipients, and I dare say the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, for delivering a budget that leaves us with hope for a better tomorrow and the faith in our destiny. Madam Speaker, it is easy to be magnanimous and dole out money left, right, and center when there is plenty. I imagine it also easy to be profligate in times of plenty, as was evidenced from 2010 to 2015. But it takes creativity, strength, and determination to chart the course for a country that has been left almost bankrupt. It also takes dedication and a love for country to allow oneself to be assailed by those who know better, those who should know better, and those who ravage the country for personal and partisan gain and not respond in like manner. Prior to the budget presentation, throughout Trinidad and Tobago, the man in the street, the academics, the technocrats, people all over were predicting a budget of doom and gloom. People also opined that we will have to suck salt after this budget, the we here being Trinidad and Tobago's lower and middle income earners. Instead, we have been presented with balance and equity, and the burden of adjustment to be shared by all, and more so those that can most afford. This budget that focuses on changing the paradigm, putting the economy on a sustainable path, has clearly taken the wind out of our detractors. I listened to the Leader of the Opposition and members on the opposite bench on Friday, and their presentations were somewhat lackluster. There was no fire. There was no believability. There was very little substance. And Madam Speaker, allow me to quote from an article by Keith Sabero in today's Express entitled, "Kamla about power, not politics." And he states, "Beyond the gallery for television, Mrs. Persad Bissessar on Friday left us with nothing memorable and or elevated." Madam Speaker, we may ask ourselves why. Why presentations in that manner? It is because deep down, the members on the opposite bench realize that this government has done wonderfully well with the hand that we have been dealt.
Well put it.
And it is also going to put Trinidad and Tobago's economy on a sustainable path. Madam Speaker, times are challenging, and there are difficult decisions to be made. But there are two critical positive factors at work in Trinidad and Tobago's interests. First, the PNM's base philosophy, which is about caring for people, all people, Madam Speaker, not for supporters, not for family, not for friends, all people, and protecting the vulnerable in society. And secondly, the government has an excellent, rational, and workable development plan in Vision 2030. Citizens are therefore assured that this government will not be operating by VAPs or with knee-jerk reactions, but in a planned and strategic manner. Madam Speaker, on Friday, I noted the Leader of the Opposition in her presentation would have indicated that nothing has been put in place to mitigate the effects of the current economic situation. Madam Speaker, I want to inform this August House and the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago that the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, mindful of its mandate and in the face of the Honorable Prime Minister's expressed concern for government's response to the impact of the economic downturn on the most vulnerable in society, took steps that have resulted in the development of a national social mitigation plan. Madam Speaker, we sought to ensure that we had input, buy-in, and ownership from this plan from the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. And to this end, we conducted 4 national social dialogues in Northeast Trinidad, Central Trinidad, South Trinidad, and in Tobago. We also had conducted outreach surveys within the rural community. Focus group sessions were held with the youths, with civil society. Interviews were undertaken with social sector experts, and questionnaires were administered to social sector ministries, regional corporations, and professional associations. This means, Madam Speaker, that we have the widest range possible of contributions to the input in the National Social Mitigation Plan. Madam Speaker, the data collected was reported on in 2 working papers, compilation of the National Strategic Plan for Trinidad and 1 for Tobago. And Madam Speaker, the findings in these working papers suggested that not just the people, but institutions, budgets, and whole sectors had been impacted by the economic downturn. And we also found that the heaviest burdens were being placed on the poor and indigent, the middle class, the elderly, single parents, persons with disabilities, women, children, and the unemployed. The ministry then engaged the Center for Health Economics under the leadership of Professor Carl Theodore to develop the plan. And they were guided in the development of this plan by the 2 working papers and the lessons learned from the Thailand experience. Madam Speaker, in the late 1990s, after a significant financial crisis and economic downturn, Thailand implemented a comprehensive social sector program that successfully mitigated the adverse social impacts of that crisis, particularly in the labor and social welfare sectors. And Thailand plan focus on mitigating short-term impacts and overcoming them in the long term. Madam Speaker, our National Social Mitigation Plan, appropriately themed Building Resilience to Secure Our Nation, seeks to equip persons affected by the downturn with the resources and tools needed to cope with short-term consequences and to overcome them in the long term. The plan therefore targets those in vulnerable socio-economic positions, retrenched workers, the unemployed, lower-income earners, our youth, persons with disabilities, and poor individuals and families. And it has three main objectives. One, strengthening the social protection system, promoting community and civil society action, and enhancing productivity and innovation. Madam Speaker, as we implement the National Social Mitigation Plan, we will conduct a comprehensive review of our priority social programs across ministries with a view to restructuring them for greater impact, increased efficiency, effectiveness, and relevance. We will also undertake a review of our legislative and policy frameworks to determine the need for any amendments or new legislation. A comprehensive assessment of the disability sector will also be done so as to identify what is available and whether there are any gaps. We will also introduce a component in the social programs to engender a transformation in values, attitudes, and behaviors that are necessary for appropriate socio-cultural values. Madam Speaker, and of course, we will implement a package of short-term relief measures that will provide immediate assistance to the persons most affected by the downturn, and including those recently retrenched. Madam Speaker, I am pleased to inform this House that the Ministry has secured Cabinet approval for the National Social Mitigation Plan and has commenced the examination of the priority areas for action and the development of appropriate action plans. Implementation of this plan will be on a phased basis, with $2 million being expended in 2018. And I dare say, Madam Speaker, that this National Social Mitigation Plan is positioned to achieve its objectives, given its thrust on human capital development, sustainability, empowerment, and continuous improvement. Madam Speaker, the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services' core responsibility is the delivery of social services, inclusive of income support, and the maintenance of a safety net that protects our poor and other vulnerable citizens from the impact of poverty. It improves their lives and livelihoods and strengthens resilience. Madam Speaker, so I was somewhat disappointed when the member for Couva North on Friday made reference to the safety net and stated that a number of grants were no longer available. Madam Speaker, there is nothing further from the truth. All of the grants that were in existence in 2017 continue into fiscal 2018.
We will determine that it be so.
Today, I am extremely pleased to inform this House and the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago that despite our dire economic situation, this government has maintained its social safety network. This is great news, Madam Speaker, for the 168,345 individuals and families who receive the Senior Citizen Pension, the Disability Assistance Grant, and the Public Assistance Grant. Madam Speaker, these three programs received a total allocation of $4.4 billion, or approximately 96.5% of our ministry's total allocation for recurrent expenditure. Madam Speaker, if nothing else, this is testimony to this government's philosophy of caring for the vulnerable and putting people first. Madam Speaker, this welcome decision places an even greater responsibility on our ministry to improve targeting improve targeting and service delivery, and a reduction in expenditure. So we must ensure that only those who are eligible receive benefits. Steps must also be taken to provide support required to bring beneficiaries to self-sustainability and graduation out of programs. This has started and will continue to be done in 2018. Madam Speaker, even as we address the issue of poverty, we are guided by government's national strategic framework, which effectively mandates the development of more cost-effective strategies in the delivery of our services. The need to do as much or more with less forces us to improve our targeting mechanisms and to ensure that improved efficiencies and value for money underpin all of our systems, programs, and initiatives. The ministry remains committed to breaking the cycles of poverty and dependency in Trinidad and Tobago and will continue to do so in 2018 through 1, the development of a national poverty reduction strategy in collaboration with the UNDP. This activity will entail the conduct of stakeholder consultations in the 14 municipal corporations. Robust evidence-based policy and program design of critical importance and cannot be overemphasized. And I indicate here, Madam Speaker, that the SLC 2014, because of its shortfalls, effectively hampered progress on the poverty reduction strategy and the regional poverty profiles. But those problems and shortcomings have been identified, and we therefore expect that the SLC 2018 will guide developments in this area. Madam Speaker, the effective administration of social protection grants via the provision of 13 social service grants, including general assistance grants, dietary grant, education assistance grant, rental assistance, funeral grants, continued in 2017, with 1,035 persons being beneficiaries of these grants. There were also 377 families benefiting from minor house repair, house wiring, and sanitary plumbing grants to a cost of $7.4 million. Madam Speaker, this budget speaks in terms of changing paradigms. And the Ministry of Social Development's understanding and embracing of the need for a shift in the paradigm and the ability to effectively do so was most evident in the aftermath of Tropical Storm Brit, when we secured approval for a change in the payment process for general assistance grants that resulted in the faster processing of applications and payment. I am pleased to advise that the ministry was able to make its first set of payments within 2 weeks, and that checks were delivered to recipients, the 1,643 of them within their communities, Madam Speaker. And this helped to ensure a return to normalcy and to bring restoration in the shortest possible time. Madam Speaker, the recipients were very, very appreciative of this and commended the ministry on many occasions for its timely payments. This, Madam Speaker, is evidence of our caring for and putting people first. Madam Speaker, the member for Couva North also indicated that food cards are not available. Madam Speaker, there is nothing further from the truth. The ministry continues to provide food support to persons who are eligible, and this is done via the debit card and the check system. And the members of this House will recall, last year I would have informed this Honourable House that in the interest of reducing expenditure and being more cost-effective, it was required of us to utilize check payment for some recipients. So, Madam Speaker, I say to this House and to the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago who may have been misinformed that despite reports to the contrary, the ministry continues to provide food support to our poor and vulnerable and those affected by natural or man-made disasters. I also want to remind the population that food support is intended to be short-term assistance for the poor and vulnerable families who are unable to meet their nutritional requirements due to limited income. Eligibility is determined by the administration of a means test that applies to 4 variables: net income, education, asset, and housing, with net income being the major variable. Madam Speaker, food card or food support was never intended for distribution by MPs to their supporters, to be used as an election ploy, or to be retained indefinitely. And now more than ever, our economic circumstances require that we employ the most effective targeting and allocation mechanisms. The ministry has therefore been ensuring that the means test is applied in every instance, that there are reviews and recertification exercise as mandated by our policies. And over the last 2 years, Madam Speaker, this has resulted in the removal of approximately 18,900 recipients who had either died, migrated, failed to provide requested information, or their income situation had improved and they were no longer qualified. Madam Speaker, no food cards were taken back from anyone. And I dare say, Madam Speaker, these activities resulted in savings of approximately $159.6 million for redistribution. And this was seen in 2017, when 6,810 new beneficiaries received food support. And as at September 2017, 27,435 individuals and families were receiving food support. Madam Speaker, Vision 2030 reminds us that effective governance serves as a catalyst for social transformation. And the key to this transformation is improving service delivery and pursuing service excellence. The Ministry of Social Development and Family Service has long recognized the critical importance of efficient and effective service delivery and has implemented several initiatives towards this end. First and most importantly, Madam Speaker, the people we serve must be aware of our benefits and services, the eligibility criteria, and how and where they can be accessed. Feedback from the public during our general consultations and outreach programs and from councillors and community groups suggested that there was a high level of ignorance of the system and misinformation in the public domain. And so during 2017, the ministry responded by embarking on a series of public information, education, and sensitization sessions throughout Trinidad. And Madam Speaker, for ease of convenience, we did it within the constituencies, and we have covered all constituencies in Trinidad and Tobago. And we will be going to Tobago within 2018, and we'll be doing a second round within communities in those 39 constituencies in Trinidad. Because the aim is, Madam Speaker, that the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago must have an increased knowledge and awareness about the ministry's products and services. And we in the ministry must be able to improve our targeting through the identification of poor, vulnerable, and other at-risk groups. But, Madam Speaker, having an excellent suite of benefits and an informed public cannot by themselves bring about the required change. The ministry's service must be timely and of a high quality. And this is only achievable when the persons who deliver the service are well-trained, knowledgeable, and have the right skills and attitude. Mindful of this, Madam Speaker, and of the theme 2 of Vision 2030, which speaks to delivering service excellence, the ministry has embarked on an extensive training and retraining exercise in client care for all of our staff. The priority objective being to produce sustained culture change and a customer-centric approach by staff. Since the program's inception in March 2017, 660 members of staff from all levels have been trained. During 2018, we will be implementing monitoring and evaluation and audit exercises. We are going to be deploying feedback boxes so we can get feedback from the public. We will also adopt the mystery supper approach so that we can get even more feedback. And we emphasize, Madam Speaker, it cannot be emphasized enough that we will continue to train and retrain members of the public and the staff of the ministry. Madam Speaker, the current configuration of our social service delivery system represents a silo approach. And this can result in double dipping, time wasting, inefficiencies, frustrations, and persons in need not being able to successfully access available benefits and services. These circumstances, Madam Speaker, demand significant change. And so the ministry has begun moving towards and will fully embrace the adoption of an integrated approach to service delivery in 2018. Madam Speaker, in 2016, I informed this Honourable House and the country that the ministry's bankers had deemed our debit cards obsolete, it continued to use high risk, and had therefore stopped issuing new cards. We are going to be implementing a new, more secure debit card before the end of the first quarter. This provides us with an opportunity to assess all current food card recipients, and we expect that at the end of that exercise, only those who are eligible for food support will be in receipt of a debit card. Madam Speaker, regrettably, the developmental component of the food support, which was called Rise Up, was never fully implemented. This resulted in few people graduating out of the program. The ministry will be vigorously implementing our new developmental component, which is called Social Transformation and Empowerment Program, Uplifting People, or Step Up. This will be done over the next 3 years, Madam Speaker. And this developmental component is intended to steer beneficiaries on a path of resilience and reduce dependency on social assistance. They will be provided with opportunities to become gainfully employed. We will enroll them in adult educational programs, and we will seek to enhance their communication skills and also provide them with funding from micro-enterprises via the seed grant. Madam Speaker, and in this vein, I am particularly heartened by government's plans to include CPEP in agriculture, because this presents an opportunity for our clients and others to, while earning income, also develop agricultural skills that will equip them to produce foods for their families' consumption and or to supplement their income. So I thank the Minister of Finance for that. Another major change that occurred in 2017, Madam Speaker, was the incorporation into social welfare of the food support. Madam Speaker, the ministry initiated a transitioning exercise overseen by an internal change management team to ensure that the process was seamless. And I report, Madam Speaker, that the initial challenges have been overcome and members of staff are now on board. So the public of Trinidad and Tobago, when they enter one of the ministry's regional offices, can now go to any one of the customer reps and not only apply for senior citizen pension or disability grant, but can also apply right there for food support. Madam Speaker, at present, each division within the ministry administered their own and sometimes a different means test. This was not in keeping with best practice. This is not in the interest of improved service delivery. So, Madam Speaker, we have developed a standardized means test. And that means test will now determine the eligibility for all programs and grants offered by the ministry. This will ensure more effective targeting for all programs and grants to those most in need. Madam Speaker, I dare say that this means test, this standard means test, can become a universal means test across all ministries, in keeping with the approach that will be adopted under the National Social Mitigation Plan. Madam Speaker, we have also instituted a single intake form. At present, members of the public who seek to access grants of the ministry have to make separate applications for each grant. That is time-consuming, it can lead to frustration, it can also lead to double-dipping and wastage. So we have developed a single intake form, and that form can be utilized for all and every grant. It also affords the ministry the opportunity to do a holistic assessment of each applicant, and this will also facilitate the timely approval of grants. Madam Speaker, it is beyond imagination that the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services has functioned all of these years without an integrated management system. It is not surprising, therefore, that we had problems with managing our grant portfolio, keeping administrative costs down, and our data at times is questionable. And given our shift to an integrated approach, this can only be achieved if there is an integrated IT system. And so, Madam Speaker, in 2018, the ministry will commence implementation of an integrated IT system. This system is expected to result in reduced administrative costs, linking of clients to case management records, reduction in duplications, effective management of our grant portfolio, the elimination of double-dipping, and it will also facilitate the monitoring, evaluation, and auditing of programs. Madam Speaker, iGovTT has already been engaged to procure and manage implementation of the ISEMS project at a cost of $331,147. $10 million has been allocated in this budget for this project, which will be implemented on a phased basis. The first phase being due for completion by the end of fiscal 2018. And Madam Speaker, this allocation signals government's understanding of the critical importance of having an integrated IT system to the success of service delivery excellence within the ministry. Madam Speaker, the ministry is mindful that achievement of the objectives of the integrated approach will also require changes to some structures, some systems, policies, and procedures. In 2018, the ministry will therefore embark on a restructuring exercise which will entail a review and maybe revision of programs and rationalization of some existing units. Some units may become obsolete, for example, TCCTP, which has now been integrated into the social welfare unit. Some units will increase in size and structure, as has already happened with the social welfare unit. And we may have the introduction of new units, such as our social support and empowerment unit, which is one of the mechanisms for the introduction of the integrated model within the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services and across ministries. Madam Speaker, I want to give the public the assurance, however, that this restructuring exercise, we do not anticipate increases in our total staff complement as a result of it, because we are very mindful of the need to operate within our budget allocation and to not increase costs. Madam Speaker, other initiatives that we have implemented in the interest of promoting service delivery excellence is the direct method of payment. And I'm pleased to inform this House and the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago that 2,700 senior citizen pensioners were paid via direct deposit in August. And this month, for the very first time, we were able to pay 2,500 recipients of the Disability Assistance Grant and Public Assistance Grant via direct deposit to their bank accounts. Madam Speaker, we will also be removing the life certificate process. We have already signed the MOU with the Registrar General's office. They will be providing us with information on debts, and so we expect that as of January 2018, our senior citizens will no longer have to come to the ministry's office to certify that they are still alive. Madam Speaker, I turn now to the socially displaced. Despite implementation of numerous initiatives over the years, the issue of street dwellers continue to be a major problem. And Madam Speaker, if ever there is need for a shift in paradigm, it is in this area. The Ministry of Social Development and Family Services recognize that this problem doesn't require just a new creative approach, but also a collaborative effort across ministries and the private sector. And so, Madam Speaker, we convened a meeting. This meeting was attended by the Ministers of Rural and Local Development, Minister of Health, Minister of the Social Development, and it's escaped me now, but there were 4 key ministers attending that session, and national security. And at that meeting, we also invited all mayors. Unfortunately, the mayor of Chaguanas chose not to attend, but all other mayors attended. And we also had the private sector represented by DOMA. Madam Speaker, and at the end of that meeting, it was decided that we will establish a working committee. That working committee met, and over a 15-week period, at the end of which they produced a report. Madam Speaker, and I dare say that was an excellent and comprehensive report. And some of the findings in that report included the fact that the current legislation only provides for the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service and health personnel removing street dwellers. The Ministry of Social Development and Family Services cannot involuntarily remove street dwellers. It's only if they voluntarily agree to be removed. And very little of them do so, Madam Speaker. It was also established that 30% of the persons on the street have mental health issues, and the accommodation at the St. Anne's Hospital and the other hospitals is inadequate to accommodate them. It was also found that the current care options available to street dwellers are inadequate, and the standards of delivery required improvements. There is an urgent need for reliable data, Madam Speaker. Despite doing numerous head counts, at the end of it all, we are unable in a definitive way to say what is the total population of street dwellers. There are no assessment centers at present. There is an absence of health service delivery mechanism except for the mentally ill. There is a lack of employment opportunities for those who have been rehabilitated. And very importantly, the Socially Displaced Persons Act number 59 of 2000, a major piece of legislation to deal with street dwellers, was never proclaimed. There is also the non-existence of dedicated transitional housing. Madam Speaker, having made these findings, the committee then looked at how do we approach this and what are the recommendations going forward. And the recommendations made by that committee, Madam Speaker, represents a major change in thinking and approach. They have recommended a 4-step continuum of care, the first step of which is engagement. But one of the major changes, even in this first step, is that they are going to adopt the reform of local government approach, in that the local government, the corporations are going to be responsible for, together with the Ministry of Health, for removal of street dwellers. And this is important, Madam Speaker, because we need the members of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service to be treated with the Minister's Crime Plan, so we can utilize the municipal police to treat with street dwellers. We have also looked at the Socially Displaced Persons Act. And while, Madam Speaker, the Act could be improved, given our current circumstances, it is felt that it is sufficient for us to start during this phase to utilize that Act. So we are liaising with the Ministry of the Attorney General to have that Act proclaimed as quickly as possible. And we will also together look at it in terms of any necessary amendments and bring that on to Parliament later on. We then look at the second level, which is temporary care. Madam Speaker, this speaks to developing care facilities and assessment centers. The committee has identified a parcel of land at the corner of Piccadilly Street and South Quay for construction of an assessment center and shelter. But Madam Speaker, we recognize that that is probably going to take us 2 to 3 years. So in the short term, we have identified a building on Independence Square that is currently being assessed and to determine whether it is structurally sound and whether it can be retrofitted to be utilized as an assessment center in the short term. Madam Speaker, the devolution of responsibility for oversight of these centers would be, again, to the regional corporations. We are also looking at the possibility, Madam Speaker, of having centers within communities so that the corporations within the respective areas will be responsible for treating with the socially displaced within their communities. And of course, Madam Speaker, we are going to contract the NGOs to provide services at these centers. And then we look at the issue of primary care. The provision of mental health and general medical care is key to the success of this exercise, Madam Speaker. And we are working very closely with the Ministry of Health to have dedicated health personnel to work in these centers. Rehabilitation will also include skills training and employment placement. And Madam Speaker, we have identified our facility, New Horizons in Piparo, and we are going to be transferring it to the Ministry of Health so that it can be better utilized to treat with those persons who have mental health issues. We then come to the issue of advanced care. Madam Speaker, we can take the street dwellers off the street, we can treat them, we can rehabilitate them. But if at the end of that exercise, there is nowhere for them to live, they will return to the streets. So to avoid that, Madam Speaker, we are looking at the issue of transitional housing upon the completion of rehabilitation. And Madam Speaker, we will be liaising with the Ministry of Housing because we will need to revisit our social housing facility. But Madam Speaker, I expect that the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, after having listened to that continuum of care that we are going to provide to our socially displaced, will agree with us that we are going to be very much closer to dealing effectively with the issue of street dwelling in Trinidad and Tobago. Madam Speaker, the ministry is of the firm view that the private sector has a key role to play in street dwelling. To this end, we met with the representatives of DOMA, and they indicated that some members of the private sector are willing to support government plans. Similar meetings will be held in other cities and municipal corporations. And Madam Speaker, I am pleased to inform this August House that Cabinet has accepted the Working Committee's report and agreed to the implementation of the recommendations. And so in 2018, you can expect that we will commence implementation of the recommendations, including the acquisition of land, the establishment of a center on Independence Square, the identification of suitable buildings for regional centers, and proclamation of the SDP Act 2000. Madam Speaker, I now look at the issue of aging. The ministry continued to cater to the needs of the elderly population in the form of income support and opportunities for them to pursue an active lifestyle and contribute to the development of the nation. Madam Speaker, this government is ever mindful of protecting and caring for the vulnerable in society, and so we have ensured that the increase in license fee for private hospitals are not applicable to homes for the aged, thereby ensuring that the elderly do not experience any added financial pressure. The family, Madam Speaker, is one of the most important institutions in our society and can be the heartbeat of a productive society. A draft national parenting policy that aims to improve parenting practices in Trinidad and Tobago has been laid in Parliament. And during the first quarter of fiscal 2018, it will be the basis of national consultations. And Madam Speaker, during 2017, we continue to provide counseling to couples and families in order to reduce family dysfunction, violence, abuse, and to mitigate suicide. And to this end, 3,684 clients receive counseling, and 2,401 received advice and information. Madam Speaker, in our support of persons with disabilities, we have been seeking to review the national policy on persons with disabilities, and to this end, we held 4 stakeholder consultations. Madam Speaker, the views there were varied and divergent, and it has affected our ability to finalize the document. As a result, a decision was made to have an independent committee comprised of representatives from CODO, academia, the disability sector, and civil society to review and finalize the second draft of this national policy. And we expect that it should be finalized by the first quarter of 2018. Madam Speaker, the ministry is seeking to partner with the Ministry of Health to establish assessment and therapeutic centers in communities within the 14 regional corporations to facilitate greater and easier access for persons with disabilities. Madam Speaker, it is impossible for this government to be able to put centers within all communities, and so we are looking at health centers and hospitals in the first instance to have these community facilities. Significant strides have been made, Madam Speaker, towards the development of a national register for persons with disabilities, and we have been doing that in collaboration with UNDP. We have also provided assistive devices to our clients to improve their quality of life, and to this end, we spent $1.6 million to provide 44 persons with prostheses. Madam Speaker, over 1,500 clients are currently serviced by Eldamo with bus service, and this has increased their mobility and participation in the society. Discussions are ongoing with PTSC as we strive to provide a more relevant and efficient bus service. And Madam Speaker, the government clearly articulated at the commencement of its term that civil society engagement is a key success factor for sustainable development. The ministry therefore partners and is greatly assisted by civil society in its delivery of services to the displaced, elderly, and persons with disability. And Madam Speaker, in fiscal 2017, 24 NGOs received a total of $43,632,513 to support their work and to facilitate the delivery of specialized services for persons with disabilities in their care. We also provided one-off grants to 20 NGOs to assist in the execution of social development projects with funds totaling $463,786, and one-off grants of under $10,000 were distributed to 110 organizations, amounting to $744,801. In fiscal 2018, Madam Speaker, we will continue to work with civil society to build capacity within the community for effective service delivery and to equip them to adequately undertake their mandate. Greater attention will also be given to addressing issues of accountability and value for money in the provision of subventions to civil society.
West, your original 45 minutes are now spent. You are entitled to a further 10 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I will utilize my remaining 10 minutes to speak to my constituents in Lupino Bonner West. And Madam Speaker, I take this opportunity to thank each and every constituent of Lupino Bonner West for their support, for their assistance, for their patience and understanding during the last 2 years. I also thank them for coming out to our MEL sessions and contributing, letting us be aware of what their concerns are, what their issues are, and also providing advice and ideas for moving Lupino Bonner West and this government forward. Madam Speaker, the main campaign promise I made, and I made very few, was the provision of water in taps to the homeowners in Windy Hill and Edna Hill. And Madam Speaker, I am very pleased to indicate that WASA, who has been working against all odds to make this a reality, has indicated that water would be in Windy Hill and Edna Hill by November of this year.
Well, put it.
Granted that water will be on a phased basis, but I am sure the residents of those two areas will be extremely happy to at last be provided with tap-borne water into their homes.
After that, you call it Water Hill.
Yes. Madam Speaker, the residents of McDavid Trace in Surrey Village, Lopino, I also am pleased to inform them that the intake has been completed within McDavid Trace. And they are also going to be provided with water from that intake. And these are the people of Lower Lopino, Soaphill, McDavid Trace. They are now going to be serviced by the intake that has been constructed in McDavid Trace. And Madam Speaker, this is no mean achievement because these projects were not on WASA's strategic plan, but having spoken to them and explained the situation, the people at WASA rose to the occasion. And we are now in a position where this government can provide these residents with a reliable pipe-borne supply of water. I also want to inform constituents that the Minister of Works and Transport has indicated that the works identified during his tour of the constituency would commence this year. This is good news, I am sure, for residents of Victory Heights in Arima, Paradise in Tacarigua, Five Rivers, La Resource, La Floristan, Thomas Trace in Aruca, and Lopino. Constituents, your patience will pay off because we are going to commence these projects in 2018. Government's plans as articulated in the budget are also very welcome. Madam Speaker, on any given office day, at least 70% of my constituents come to me seeking assistance in securing housing. So the fact that we anticipate an additional 1,000 houses being produced through our collaboration with the private sector is very welcome for my constituents. There are also a number of them who at this point in time may not be able to afford a mortgage. So the issue of rent-to-own and rental is very, very welcome and will make those constituents extremely happy, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, and as I close, I want to thank the staff of the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, for without them, we would not have been able to achieve all that we have over the last 2 years. We would not have been able to make the shifts in paradigm that we have made that has effectively improved efficiency and effectiveness in the ministry. It is all due to their dedication. Madam Speaker, I also want to thank the staff of the Lopino-Bonner West Constituency Office and, of course, all of the public servants that would have contributed to the preparation of the national budget. And Madam Speaker, as I close, I want to assure the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago that the social safety net is intact and is in very good hands. For this government to interfere with their benefits, it would have to be that water is more than flour. And Madam Speaker, water is not more than flour now. And the Prime Minister has indicated that we will not travel on the road to IMF, so they can rest assured that they will continue to receive all of the grants, all of the benefits at the 2017 level. Madam Speaker, I thank you.
Well put it.
Member for Tabaki.
Well put it. Well put it.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And I'm very, very happy to join in this debate today. Thank you very much. Madam Speaker, I begin my presentation today by congratulating the Member of Parliament for Superior and the opposition leader for her very vibrant contribution which she made to the debate and for her visionary statement and detailed analysis of government's decisions and government's performance. In fact, the leader of the opposition was able to expose the shallowness and emptiness of the PNM government. And the nation has been witnessing, in her own words, what are crises in national security, tourism, especially in Tobago, a lack of investment in projects which could catapult the diversification trust, and also crises in health and food production. Madam Speaker, it is very interesting to me, therefore, that this morning, the honourable member who just spoke, the Honourable Minister of Social Development, began with a quotation from an article in the Trinidad Express by Keith Suberu, journalist. But she chose a particular line in the article, but forgot to read the very beginning of the article. The article says, and I quote him, "Opposition leader Kamla Prasad Bisesa's budget presentation on Friday was simply outstanding. In her lengthy performance, she shone." And when I read the totality of this article, what I discern is that Keith Suberu, who once used to publish under here that he was an advocate of the PNM, that he has stopped doing that. But it's an article in which he expresses deep fears about the rise of Kamla Prasad Bisesa once more. To such an extent that he goes and he quotes Machiavelli, he quotes Moses, but he quotes also a 3rd century Indian philosopher, Kautilya, who wrote that the remnants of an enemy can become active like a disease or fire, and that one should never ignore an enemy knowing him to be weak. He becomes dangerous in due course like the spark of fire in a haystack. Everything in this Keith Suberu article shows a deep fear of what is now perceived by the population as the rejuvenation and rise of Kamla Prasad Bisesa and the UNC. Because we have demonstrated in the last 18 months, 24 months of being in opposition, that we are capable of rising to the task of governing this country once again in the interest of prosperity for all the peoples of Trinidad and Tobago.
Well said. Well said.
Madam Speaker, the question for me in this debate is not about the expenditures of the People's Partnership. In fact, I discern that something interesting is happening in the country with the PNM, in that what they are trying to do is create a narrative or a conversation about the spending of the UNC and the People's Partnership in order to avoid focus upon their incompetence and the way they are spending money, Mr. Speaker. And Madam Speaker, it is not going to happen because the people are seeing through that. And the people are saying, like I said today, that I am not here to debate the past. I am here to debate how we create a future of prosperity for Trinidad and Tobago.
Well said.
So, Madam Speaker, I have several questions which I want to ask of myself as I proceed with my contribution in terms of this budget. And the basic one is, does the budget address the concerns of the people? Does the budget address the concerns of the people? I ask this because, Madam Speaker, good governance, for me, is governance that effectively and efficiently addresses and solves the concerns and problems of the people. And what are the people's concerns? Walk the streets of Trinidad and Tobago today. Walk it over the last 12 months in particular. And you are going to see people asking the following questions. 1, can I feed myself and my family on a sustainable basis? Can I do that? Secondly, can I adequately shelter myself and my family? Thirdly, would I have access to proper health care and affordable health care at that? Fourthly, would I be the beneficiary of a reliable and affordable public transport system? And perhaps above all, would I be safe in terms of my personal security and also security with respect to my job? These are the concerns of the people, and this is what we are here to debate. Does the budget create a future that will give these assurances to the people of Trinidad and Tobago? And Madam Speaker, my view is that this is not so. This is not so. Because what the government has shown in the last 24 months is that there is a deficit in terms of the capacity to move ideas into implementable projects. And the government has therefore been failing miserably in terms of improving the quality of life of citizens thereby. Madam Speaker, do people feel safe? Let's just take one. Do people feel safe? Madam Speaker, government says it is about saving jobs. Very noble objective, you know. Very noble objective. Because if you don't have a job, you can't feed your family, you can't pay your mortgage, you become a dependent of the state. And we do not want to have people becoming dependents of the state. They say they have to save jobs. But to save jobs, you have to generate revenue. And you have to generate income. And to do that, you have to make sure that businesses are flourishing in the country, whether they be small business enterprises or whether it be big business. We've already seen under this PNM the close down of Mittal and almost 2,000 people directly and indirectly going out of jobs. I drove through Faizabad yesterday. And 3 small groceries that I knew there were closed. So something is happening to small business already, and that they are feeling the pinch, and they are closed.
PNM logic.
Madam Speaker, how long can you sustain deficit budgeting? 12 billion last year, another 7 billion, another 4 billion and so on. How long are you going to sustain that? You have to find a way to generate income and so on. But, Madam Speaker, you have to do that by attracting local investment and by attracting foreign investments. And one of the questions I want to ask today, early in my presentation, is why has been there such a low level of foreign direct investment in the country, outside of the energy sector in particular? Why? Madam Speaker, recently I met a businessman who came to Trinidad. And this man is a magnate, a business magnate who was looking for investments. And he doesn't handle anything less than $15 million US in terms of an investment. And he came to this country on a brief holiday, and I met him, and he asked me, he says, what is there in your country for me to invest? And before I could answer, he said, your country is a place I would have difficulty investing. And I said, why? He said, firstly, the bureaucracy of doing business in your country. The bureaucracy is stifling. Secondly, you have a productivity problem in your country, a serious productivity problem. Thirdly, the crime and personal security for any foreign investor coming here is an issue. And also you have very strong trade unions. And he gave very, very strong arguments as to what would dissuade him from investing in this country. And I asked the government a question today. What are you doing to convince people that these factors that they identify as deterring them, as detriments to their investing in the country, what are we doing in order to alleviate those fears and to improve the climate for investment? Not only for foreign direct investment, but also for local people who seem to have lost confidence in the economy and are either parking up or engaging in capital flight. Madam Speaker, so people's jobs are under threat. The government is saying that there's a moratorium until December. What happens after December? What happens after December if you are unable to raise the kind of revenue? Madam Speaker, the Honourable Minister, who comes from Paul Spain North, St. Anne's West, he said in a statement he made on Friday at a public meeting in Pigot's Corner, he says, I think that you should all give a PNM government a round of applause because what he said, what we have done is introduce a royalty tax of 12.5% on the value of gas extracted from Trinidad and Tobago grounds. And I think you should give PNM a round of applause for that, he said, because unlike the past, we haven't come to tax the small man and the middle class that are already there carrying their part of the burden. Well, are you not taxing the small man and the middleman? Come on. Everything in that budget is about tax, tax, and tax. And the government has introduced several new taxes which are placing the lives of people in jeopardy and also their future in terms of the 5 concerns I read. Everything will increase in cost. 50% increase in diesel fuel is no small increase. That is why you have the maxi taxis and the fishermen and everyone else making the noise that they're making. 30% corporation tax. Madam Speaker, you're also applying that to small businesses. So they now have to pay 5% more also, Madam Speaker. What are they going to do when they cannot absorb it? They're going to send people home. They're going to cut back in other ways. And you're going to be affecting the economy worse. And then let us not forget, the government has already signaled that the RIC is working on increases in WASA rates and T&TEC rates. So tell me, which small man are you not affecting? Madam Speaker, the opposition leader in her response made a very brilliant intervention when she pointed out that if the rich man has to spend $5 more and the poor man has to spend $5 more because of these taxes, they both have to spend the same amount. So you cannot tell me that you're not taxing and you're not impoverishing the middle class and the poorer classes in this country. You're impoverishing them. And the people are going to be further impoverished because of what is happening to the debt ratio in the country. Look at the review of the economy and you'll see what is happening to the debt ratio. When you increase the debt in a country through borrowing, what you do is you increase the liability upon every citizen. The money has to come from somewhere to pay the debt. And either you tax them or you get it somehow out of them. Madam Speaker, the debt in 2015, when we left office, was 76 million. Today, it is 93.7 million, a rise of 22.5%. Or, if you look at another way, in the last 2 years, it has gone from 45.4% of GDP to 60.5% of GDP, which means that in those 2 years, the government has increased the debt to GDP by 33%, 33.33%. That is a lot of increase that has taken place. And I therefore have to ask again the question, where are you going to get the money to pay these debts if you are not increasing your foreign direct investment, if you are not increasing your revenue base? Where are you going to get it? And the government is not showing where it's going to come from. Okay, so you say you have got sale of assets. That's a one-time affair. And that's going to be done and over with. Madam Speaker, what we are seeing is that the government's performance and management of the economy can only be described as poor management of the economy. But had they really managed and had they really done their work that they should have done, we would not have had $12.6 billion in deficit last year. Madam Speaker, do you know how inefficient the government has been in collection? I will show you from the figures in the revenue document that is here. VAT was estimated to be 7.8 billion. They only realized 6.4 billion, a shortfall of 1.4 billion in VAT collections. Madam Speaker, excise duties. They expected to collect $987.5 million. All they collected was $691.9 million, a drop of almost $300 million. Motor vehicle taxes were estimated to be $414 million. They only collected $245 million. Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, here's a very interesting one. Cigarettes. They estimated that they will collect on taxes and so on $400 million. They collected $227 million. Madam Speaker, it is not necessarily that smoking is going down and alcoholic consumption is going down, you know. Beer consumption has risen because the excise duties on beer has risen. But what I think is that the Ministry of National Security and the Customs and Excise Department should get on the job to see the level of smuggling that is taking place into the country. That is denying the government the collection of the monies that we are supposed to collect. And they're smuggling. And the ports of Cedras, the port of Orange Valley, the port of Cali Bay, the Maruga, the same places that they are smuggling in and have human trafficking taking place. It is time that the people do their jobs. And Minister of National Security, if necessary, rotate the people down at Cedras so you have new people on the job and not the same people you have all the time who the people are speaking about as not doing the job. So that people entrusted to do a job are not doing the job and we are losing. That shows inefficiency in the way you are managing national security in the country to allow that kind of smuggling to take place into the country, Madam Speaker. Because I want to tell you something. West Indian Tobacco didn't lose money. In fact, West Indian Tobacco reported profit before tax of $502.8 million for 9 months ending September 30th. And the chairman, Mr. Anthony Phillip, he said that that was a 5.2% over 2015. So it's not that people are smoking less, but it is that more illegal cigarettes perhaps come in the country. And that is why I'm saying you have not closed the ports and you're not doing your job, because in addition to smuggling, what else is going on around the country that we do not know of? You want to blame the People's Partnership? Well, the People's Partnership did bring boats and leave it in your hands in the country so that you could manage and look at the ports and the seas. Madam Speaker, because of the inefficiency of the government and the decline in economic activity, citizens now have to bear additional burdens. Do we really believe that companies will absorb the additional taxation without resorting to layoffs and higher prices? Are we fools to believe that? You know, Madam Speaker, there's a tradition in a lot of debates where people quote Latin and they quote French and so on. There is a Hindi statement that when we were a child growing up, it's still very prevalent. It says, Ullu ke patta. And Ullu ke patta means son of an owl. But it's really used to describe someone who cannot get anything done and who is foolish. Madam Speaker, we are not foolish enough to think, and we are not Ullu ke pattas to think that, that the citizens will not have to bear all of this burden that is taking place in the country. Madam Speaker, you know, I don't want to forget something, but it's something that I saw in the development, draft estimates of development on page 124, item 828 under sea transport. Madam Speaker, there's a figure there under dredging of government shipping service basin to accommodate Superfast Galicia of $49 million in 2017, but nothing was spent. But then there's a figure, Mr. Prime Minister, of $28 million placed in for 2018. And I'm wondering, and I want to ask the question, why are we placing $28 million to dredge the basin for the Super Galicia? Or is it that somehow there has been a decision already? It's page here. Look, it's here in the book, page 124, line 828. It's here. Line item 828. Dredging of government shipping service basin to accommodate Superfast Galicia. 2017, 49 million. 2018, 28 million. 28 million placed there in the 2018 estimate.
18.
Yeah, 2018. 2018. All I want to ask a question is this. Is it that the Ocean Flower 2 also required dredging that it had to do?
That is the question.
Is it that? You know, I was very pleased that the Prime Minister himself acknowledged that we are paying about 6,000 or 5,000 US more a day than we should have paid for those boats that are running there now. I think, and that shows you, why didn't they go and renegotiate that rate now? If it is that you are overpaying, why didn't you go in the interest of Trinidad and Tobago and say to them, you're overcharging us, and therefore let us renegotiate it? Just like you said, you went and renegotiated with Mitsubishi and so on and so forth. 5,000 US dollars a day by 360 days is a lot of money in this hard go-over season in Trinidad and Tobago. Madam Speaker, the Minister of Finance has repeatedly said that despite his raising of the fuel prices, no one has rioted. And you know, what is unfortunate is that the Honourable Minister has interpreted this to mean that people are in agreement with his draconian taxes. I wish to differ. I believe that what has really happened is that the actions of this government has destroyed the hopes and aspirations of the people to such an extent that they are in a state of stupor. And when hope disappears, sometimes people also lose the will to fight back.
Correct.
You see, hopelessness often leads to depression. Hopelessness often leads to suicidal tendencies, to anger, and to violence. And I surmise, is this the reason why we have become such a violent society, more and more angry society? Is it because of the hopelessness that is being created by the policies and lack of economic programs to carry this country to prosperity by the current PNM government, Madam Speaker? Madam Speaker, when hope disappears, people lose the will to fight back. But you know, there will come a time when the people will be moved to fight back, and the establishment will be the subject of the attack. Be warned, Mr. Minister of Finance. Do not take the people's seeming indifference for granted.
Yeah.
Madam Speaker, let us look at what is the reality in this country. There's a labor force in this country of 645,300 persons. That's the Central Statistical Office statistics. Madam Speaker, what I'm going to tell you now is going to shock you. It's going to shock you. But it's going to shock you so deeply that you are going to wonder what are the possibilities for social disorder in this country if something is not done very soon to put people at a level at which they could survive. 77%, 494,775 of the labor force, they earn less than $6,000 a month. That's why I pause, 77%. 494,775, according to those statistics, earn less than $6,000 a month. This means that if you take the minimum wage, and it was this government that raised, on this side, the Kamala Prasad raised the minimum wage 3 times, 9, 12, 12, 15, 2 times. Yeah. That means that there are people, if they're earning the minimum wage, all they're earning is $600 a week or $2,400 a month. Madam Speaker, their salary is that low and lower. Madam Speaker, you know what? Only 23% therefore of the labor force earn above $6,000 a month. 9.2% earn between $6,000 to $8,000, 9.3% between $8,000 to $11,000, 4.8% earn above $11,000 a month. That is, and between $11,000 and $15,000, just about 2%. Madam Speaker, what does this say? It says that the majority of the labor force are low-income earners, and that the theory of the disappearing middle class is real. And what is also showing is that when the Honorable Minister of Finance and the Honorable Minister in the Ministry of the Prime Minister, the Minister of Everything, when they say that they are not taxing the poor people, what you are really doing is you are pushing the middle class lower and lower out of existence. And when the middle class cannot contribute to economic activity and spend money in a country, you are going to have a terrible downward spiral in economic activity in the country, and you're going to deepen the recession in the country. Madam Speaker, the poor, therefore, in my view, when the Minister of Finance, in his budget speech, and when he spoke Friday night also, when he wanted to make people feel that he's sharing the burden of adjustment, what he was doing was creating an illusion that he's taking more from the rich and less from the poor. The poor really amounts to your 77% earning less than $6,000 a month. That's the working population. Madam Speaker, in 1962, it was said that colonialism was gone and a nation was born, and that we were free people with independence. In 2017, we are once more being robbed of our independence by the specter of poverty, which will engulf the majority of people. That is, if strategies which will result in a prosperous nation are not introduced. The real colonial master is now poverty. Poverty. And it comes in the person of the Minister of Finance and his colleagues. And Minister, this analysis is neither sterile nor academic. It is based on fact. So, Madam Speaker, what will be the impact of the 49%, almost 50% increase in diesel fuel? Every aspect of commercial activity will be affected by this increase. Perhaps only the 2.8% of people earning above $15,000 a month will be able to withstand the shock, Madam Speaker. And the result of such inequities in income, the potential loss of jobs, the rise in the cost of living that is now inevitable will see an upsurge in criminal activity and deteriorating social status. Madam Speaker, none of us want that. None of us want that. And Madam Speaker, I want to, on behalf of our party, I want to say categorically that we will support the government and support legislation that deals with criminal activity in the country, Madam Speaker. But you must bring good legislation. And Madam Speaker, on the 28th of September 2017, that assurance was given in a letter to Dr. Keith Rowley, Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, by the Honorable Kamala Prasad Bissessa. It was given, Madam Speaker.
When he said we didn't reply.
It's here. No, I read it in here. Just that I can't find it now, but I read it here. Where we said that we'll support legislation. We support legislation. And I'll ask somebody to find, and I'll read it later on. But it's there. It's there in the letter. Madam Speaker, the government has proven itself to be insufficient in the fight against crime. Insufficient. It is almost like Schultz in that comedy drama that says, I hear nothing, I see nothing, and therefore I do nothing. Hogan's Heroes. Look at here. As indicated on many occasions previously, the opposition will support legislation that is in the best interest of the people of Trinidad and Tobago, that is constitutional, and which provides the necessary protections and safeguards to prevent abuse of fundamental rights and the exercise of arbitrary powers. You cannot have a more comprehensive statement of commitment on the part of the opposition, and that is a statement of patriotism, and that is a statement of cooperation, and that is a statement that we will engage in diplomacy with the government in order to ensure that the rights of citizens are protected in this country and that crime is removed from the face of Trinidad and Tobago, Madam Speaker. And that has come under the signature of the Honourable Leader of the Opposition. What the members on the PNM want to hear is that we say, we are supporting you, we are supporting you. No, no, no. We are in this together. And we know the value of unity in fighting crime together in the country, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, therefore at this stage, I don't think anyone can take any comfort in the new announcement made by the Minister of National Security, who has not proven capable and up to the task. Madam Speaker, in a country in which, according to the Minister of Finance when he spoke here, said that the per capita income is still approximately 17,000 US. Only 10.3%, Mr. Minister of Finance, earn over 9,000 a month. And this is why, at a personal level, and I repeat, a personal level, I have very great difficulty with people proposing devaluation. My personal position is that the poor will not be able to withstand the burden of a devaluation in a country which imports and depends for at least about 80% of what it requires. Listen, I have heard the arguments of the manufacturers in terms of export competitiveness. But the manufacturers are not talking about how they can improve their internal efficiencies and become competitive. You just don't improve your competitiveness by devaluing the dollar. You have to deal with internal efficiencies also. And that is a matter of management in their companies. I've heard the arguments of the economists and their urge to devalue. I've heard the demand and supply argument. The dollar will slip because we just do not have the wherewithal to earn the foreign exchange to support a very strong appetite for foreign goods and services. However, we can do better in the matter of foreign exchange if we do certain things. The government should be examining the sources of capital flight in this country at this moment. The government should be examining whether the value of goods being imported are being over-invoiced. That should be done. You can go on the net and find out whether, in fact, people are over-invoicing their goods. You must look carefully. And this is why the current Minister of Trade is a failure. The current Minister of Trade should be looking at goods and services which can be substituted. And all those high-paid people she has around her must be looking at alternative sources of supply of raw materials into the country that can do the same job and save foreign exchange. The government should be looking at the workings of the parallel market for US dollars and the leakage this is causing in terms of foreign exchange not being acquired by formal financial institutions. We should implement serious programs in tourism and agriculture as part of the diversification trust. And I will come to tourism to show you who destroyed tourism, especially in Tobago. And I will ask whether it is Lekoto Jambi that has done that. Madam Speaker, we should be encouraging savings in Trinidad and Tobago in US dollars by our diaspora. We should be funding entrepreneurs who can be part of the import substitution strategy. Madam Speaker, we should be encouraging people not to go to the US for holidays, but go to soft countries. Go to the Caribbean, use more EC dollars, save on US dollars. Madam Speaker, and Mr. Prime Minister, I was looking through all the list of loans that exist in the country at this point in time. And you have some loans that are as high as 10% interest rate and so on still. Why is it that we have not gone about restructuring those loans at this stage? And restructuring them in such a way that we get the benefit of the lower interest rates that are available in the country at this point in time. Are they so tied up that we cannot deal with that and we cannot engage in restructuring? Madam Speaker, we should consider launching a citizen-driven economic restraint strategy, which will involve savings in US dollars. So there are many things we can do besides simply devaluing the dollar, because what will happen to that 77% who are getting under $6,000 a month? How will they live, Madam Speaker? How will they live? We are in this together. And when the former Prime Minister and Leader of the Opposition said in the letter that we are in it to support you on constitutional, on crime laws that are constitutional and defend the rights of citizens, this too is part of our strategy and commitment. So don't try to paint us as unpatriotic as you're trying to. We are nationalists. And if we were not nationalists, I wouldn't be standing here and providing all of these ideas this morning to deal with this situation in this country, because we said that we are going to come here in this budget debate and contribute to national development through our ideas. Madam Speaker, the government has suggested that it is on the path of diversification and have identified sports and leisure tourism, agriculture, yachting, creative industries, amongst others. Madam Speaker, we have to ask ourselves certain questions. Why, for example, is our agricultural production floundering? Why? Why is it? The government says it wants to double agricultural production. There's a vast difference between how the government is approaching agriculture and how the former Prime Minister approached agriculture. Vision comes from your language. Your language projects your first vision. And one of the first things that the former Prime Minister did when she named her ministry, she said a Ministry of Food Production.
Yes.
That's a vast difference in saying Ministry of Agriculture, because you are focusing the mind of the country that we need to become self-sufficient in food and that we need to produce enough to process. Our problem might not be that we cannot produce enough. We need also to process, because a lot of our food that we import is processed food. But can we encourage our people to eat more local foods in terms of more healthy foods that we are producing? Madam Speaker, why can Costa Rican farmers produce 3 to 4 times more the amount of tomatoes on 1 acre of land than Trinidad and Tobago? That is happening. The technology is there. But what is the Ministry of Agriculture doing to import the technology? What are they doing? Madam Speaker, let me give you an example. They say they want to cut the food import bill. If you cut the food import bill, then you have to cut the bill on soya and corn, because those are 2 of the major ingredients into growing chicken in the country. Right? Madam Speaker, for how long in this country has the Ministry of Agriculture trying to grow corn? Everything is an experiment for the Ministry of Agriculture. Everything is an experiment. An experiment, an experiment, an experiment. What are those high-paid research officers? I'm not attacking the public service, but you see, the time has come in this country to call a spade a spade. The time has come in this country to tell people, get down and do your work. Get down and do your work. And what are the research officers doing? Why is it? What has happened to the agreement under the Memorandum of Understanding established by the former Prime Minister when she visited Brazil and got Embrapa and the Brazilian government to agree through CARICOM to set up a model farm in Trinidad in order to help produce even a brand of soya that will grow in our soils here in Trinidad and Tobago? Is it that when the PNM comes into office, the people who are dealing with all things, boy, now it's time to relax. Now it's time to relax. That's the difference between a working government and a government that doesn't work. And the PNM has to deal with that. They have to deal with that. That is where part of the productivity is. Madam Speaker, what is the University of the West Indies doing in terms of research and development? What are they doing in terms of research and development? Oh, they're boasting on today's paper about the genes. Well, the genes existed way before the university came about under the Imperial College of Tropical Agriculture in cocoa. It existed way before that. But what has the university done in order to work with the cocoa farmers and cocoa producers in order to develop quality chocolates? What has the Ministry of Trade and Industry done to take those fledgling chocolate manufacturers down in Vancouver and otherwise, the Montserrat Cooperative, and to go out there as the Minister of Trade and Industry and find a firm out there somewhere who are expert at chocolate manufacturing and bring them to lend their technology so that we can not just export cocoa beans, but export chocolate. We export it. I am told by the cocoa farmers and by a young man called Trinell Gani down there, young in his mid-20s. He said to me, they're exporting cocoa beans for about 5,000 US a container when we could export chocolate for about 20 to 30 times that is produced in that area. Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we need to move, therefore, from experimentation. Everything in this country is an experiment. We need to move, I'm fed up of it. We need to move from experimentation by making an instantaneous leap into the world of production, yes. Madam Speaker. World of production. We need to move where everything is on hold and everything is a dialogue to a state of doing and making it happen. That's why I use the Indian term, uluke patta. We must stop being foolish in this country. We need a cultural revolution in this country. That is the paradigm we need. A cultural revolution. A shift in attitudes. The minister speaks of a new paradigm. Mr. Minister, a new paradigm is a function of having purposeful objectives in your country to work with. Purposeful objectives, Mr. Minister. You know, Margaret Thatcher, as she worked tirelessly to change the fortunes of Great Britain, once said, prosperity comes not from grand conferences of economists, but by countless acts of personal self-confidence and self-reliance. And unless this country is united around a purposeful set of objectives, unless this country is imbued with a firm resolve, and unless the government can articulate a strategy in which people have faith, nothing will change. Madam Speaker, the problem is that the government cannot inspire and has not been inspiring the population. And that's the leadership deficit that exists in the current government. Madam Speaker, the ministers in the PNM have not demonstrated the intellectual prowess, some say vision, as well as the management skills to make a difference. So, Madam Speaker, what are the new paradigms around purposeful objectives? I would say that they are not just typical social and economic objectives. I would say what we need in this country and this UNC, what we would have done is that we would have created a commitment through the dynamic leadership that was given to this country between 2000 and 2015 by Kamla Prasad Bisesa. We'd create a commitment from all and sundry that acknowledges that we are in all this together and the willingness to share the burden and make the sacrifices. We would have gotten people to commit to that. This requires a leadership that is capable of inspiring right action. What you need is a commitment to use more locally produced products and services, saving foreign exchange. The food producers must be supported by the Ministry of Agriculture. You must have a commitment to kill the bureaucracy and quicken the pace of decision making. Public service attitudes to getting things done more speedily must change. Madam Speaker, the Prime Minister keeps heckling me across and says the Tabakit Initiative. Yes, I'm a developer, and I've been a developer in this country of houses since 1983. Back in business with my father since 1966. And I wrote the Minister of Finance, and I wrote the Honorable Prime Minister, and I'm happy to say that they acceded to some of the things that I said. And that they listened. And one of it, what I said is that in the rural districts, because of that 77% who cannot buy a house or own a house, you must be able to give them an opportunity to stop paying rent Stop being renters and have a rental vision and now have an ownership vision. And allow people to build 4 apartments on a 5,000 square foot of land, so that they can buy an apartment in one of those buildings and pay back a mortgage using the 2% mortgage at about $2,500 to $2,600 a month. Madam Speaker, the same money they are now paying in rent. Madam Speaker, and he calls it the Tabakit Initiative. I'm happy to accept as a Tabakit Initiative.
Well done.
But I want to say, Madam Speaker, that it's not going to work unless you do something about town and country planning and the approval process. I know the Prime Minister says he has taken a committee to do that. But, Madam Prime Minister, people at town and country planning take 2 months before they give you a reply when you submit a plan. 2 months. They have it put up on a thing in San Fernando. Then when they give you a reply, if there's a problem, it takes another 2 months before you fix it. 4 months gone. 1 month at least at the Ministry of the CMOH Department. 1 month at the Regional Corporation. 6 months before a house starts in this country. And you want to advance construction. The big projects are not the only things that are going to advance construction. What is going to advance construction and improve the quality of life and put small contractors to work is to reduce and kill that bureaucracy that is killing housing construction in the country. And we need to do something about it. That is the difference between a government of action, that was the People's Partnership, and a government of inaction, that is the PNM government. Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, you need to have a commitment to change the service culture and boost tourism as a foreign exchange earner and a source of jobs, especially in Tobago, where the siesta work attitude must be banished. Madam Speaker, let's take tourism as an area of diversification. The government is speaking of diversification. Who destroyed tourism in Tobago? Who destroyed it? The Lakota Jambi? Who turned around the Calcutta ship and said you didn't want the Calcutta ship there, that your hotels are now empty? Who is responsible for delivering quality service to visitors? Tobago has to take responsibility. Go to the THA documents, and you will see that every year under transport, tourism, and culture, up to $162 million are allocated by the THA. So multiply that by 8 years, and or 6 years, and you have $1 billion. $1 billion spent by the THA, and today the hotels are empty and the business properties are being sold out and so on. I wrote on the blogs that the government should intervene and support those businesses in Tobago. I wrote that on the blog, and I'm happy to see that the government has initiated that. We stand for the protection of business and private enterprise, because without private enterprise, you cannot run this country. The government cannot do it. And therefore, the facilitating environment, and when people like those small business operators in Tobago, when the banks are coming down on their backs, I would even suggest that the government consider buying some shares into those businesses so that it can be run. You talk about small and medium-sized enterprises. Let's take Agricultural Development Bank. You want to expand agriculture. Agricultural Development Bank is lending money and so on. But small business also needs management. Why is it instead of lending them all the money, the ADB doesn't go into a joint venture with them so that they can lift them off the ground as incubators, and once they are flowing, then you can let them buy back the shares? Madam Speaker, you have to think in alternative ways to develop while you secure the existing businesses and grow new businesses in the country. Madam Speaker, we talk about, so THA in my view, is making a joke of public sector money, you know. And I am saying this, I have no fear of saying this. The THA has to be examined very carefully. You cannot spend $160 million a year in culture, transport, and tourism, and you're not getting benefits for Tobago, you know. The taxpayers are paying for that. It's coming from the coffers of Trinidad and Tobago, and they have to answer in Tobago as to why this has happened. Yeah. Madam Speaker, the accounts of the Auditor General, that has to be submitted. But when submitted so long after. Sorry, Madam.
Your original 45 minutes are now spent. You're entitled to 10 more minutes. You may proceed if you need it.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you. Thank you. Madam Speaker, we talk about the fashion industry. The fashion industry. Yeah, we talk about the fashion industry. This is a fashion-conscious society, you know, a fashion-conscious society. And it is, you know, what we have to do, if you really think about it, is encourage more fashion presentations in the country. You see, fashion is not about importing fashion, Fashion is about adding value to the cloth that you import. So you spend much less money in what you import, say foreign exchange, but you add the value here. And we have very, very good designers in this country, Madam Speaker. Very, very good designers in this country, Madam Speaker. Adding value. And that's what we should be asking all the way along. Madam Speaker, the issue of diversification has to be answered with the following question. How are we positioning Trinidad and Tobago to be a relevant economy in the emerging world? And I don't think that the government has asked that question. Secondly, what it is that the world needs, and I think this is the more important question, what it is that the world needs, which Trinidad and Tobago can offer or Trinidad and Tobago can produce. What it is the world needs. Thirdly, what strategic alliances can be forged utilizing our resource base and the technology available by foreign partners to maximize export capacity? Sometimes the answer to your problem is in the question that you ask. And those questions are not being asked by the planners in the country. Madam Speaker, how are we differentiating even that which we produce now? Take tourism, for example. What do we keep advertising? We keep advertising a destination, while everybody is advertising a destination. Madam Speaker, we should be advertising an experience.
Yes.
What is the experience we are marketing? What is the experience we are marketing? Madam Speaker, we have to market an experience for our people. Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the Minister of Finance, in my closing few minutes, is hedging his bets on an increase in energy prices and an upsurge in the energy sector. He is hedging his bet on the collection of CLICO funds. He is hedging his bet on the sale of assets. Madam Speaker, we have seen that he predicted $52 for a barrel of oil and $3.25 for gas. The oil has gone down below 50, so that's dubious to start. The matter of collection of CLICO funds, that's a one-time affair. And if it's not collected, what will be our position? But if it's collected, perhaps it will close the fiscal deficit for this year. But what will happen thereafter? What will happen in the next years? Unless you have a sustainable base of revenue that you are generating into the country. Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, I go back to one thing. Education is one of our global strengths. That's what we are known for. Can we diversify by attracting medical school in Trinidad? Can we do that? Madam Speaker, what other downstream products can we produce out of methanol rather than export it? Madam Speaker, we have the private sector, and we need the private sector to invest. But they will not invest if they continue to have a low level of confidence in the economy, and on the other hand, if they continue to be as risk-averse as they are. But I want to take up the matter of confidence. Business confidence is an outcome of confidence in the government of the day, in the administration. And people have lost confidence in this government. Why are people parking up their capital? Why is there capital flight? Why are so many people wanting to migrate? And let us really deal with business closures. Madam Speaker, in terms of collection of revenue, the government predicted that it will collect taxes on income and profits in 17, I'm not talking about 18, 17, of 16,135,802. I want to take one item, collection of individual taxes, income taxes and so on. They estimated that they will have collected 7,034,307,000. Madam Speaker, you know how much they estimate they collected? 6,403,339,000. A fall of $631 million in the collection of income taxes. Madam Opposition Leader, what does this reflect? Is it that people are not returning their income taxes, or is it that the level of unemployment is much higher than is reported, and that the taxes to be collected are not being collected? What is the truth? So it seems to me that more people have lost their jobs, and the income tax that is to be paid by companies are not being paid. Online purchases, you said you'll collect 70 million. You only collected $23.8 million for the year. Right? So in so many cases, the government is failing. missing their targets. Missed their targets. Every target is missed. Madam Speaker, the objective of this government is really the retention of political power. And if this means that they have to blame Kamala or Mala, then so be it. That's what they will do. So be it. The people will reject this very soon. Only sycophants are going to believe you after a while. But the people are going to reject it. The people are not going to listen to this diatribe for very long again. The people are fed up. The people are at this time to ask us not to debate the past, but to create the future of prosperity for all of us. Madam Speaker, I want to know whether, from the Minister of Finance, whether the credit unions and also the Unit Trust Corporation is subject to the 30% tax. I want to know whether they are also subject to the 30% tax. Because we have hundreds of thousands of people who have invested in credit unions and have invested in the Unit Trust. Unit Trust was supposed to be the saving institution, the financial prosperity growing instrument for a number of poor people. Madam Speaker, in 1990, I believe it was about it, I placed some money in Unit Trust. I was able to use it when I grew to educate my daughter in London. So I know the value of Unit Trust. Are you placing a tax also on Unit Trust? Are you placing a tax on Unit Trust? Give you a quick answer. No. Thank you. So that's good. So that those people at Unit Trust, but you didn't say that in your budget presentation. So maybe by my raising it now, I've saved the incomes of hundreds of thousands of people in the country.
Good strategy.
We have saved it, Madam Opposition Leader. We have stood again for the benefit of the poor man in this country. The opposition is doing its job. The opposition is showing the influence that we want to assure all those people out there that the time is going to come soon again when we will put prosperity back into your hands. Madam Speaker, also credit unions. I heard nothing in the budget about credit unions. Credit unions are an important source of income for people. When people cannot get money borrowed in the bank, it is to the credit unions they go. And if they can't go to the credit unions, they would have had to go to those money lenders and money sharks and so on, the one who charge 35% interest, Madam Speaker. So we should be doing everything as a government to grow the credit union sector and to strengthen the credit union sector so it can assist those people who find themselves now at the mercy of the banks where they can't even open an account in the bank. The amount of things that the bank asks them to open an account. Madam Speaker, this government has failed also to implement its PSIP. Yes. It has failed miserably to implement the PSIP, Madam Speaker. Had I had the time, I will go into the figures to show you exactly how much they have not implemented.
They failed to implement their fiscal measures.
Yeah, as well. What are they doing? What did you do with the $9 billion you collected in oil taxes? What did you do with it? Where has the money gone? You used to ask us where the money gone. Now tell us where the money gone. At least we know and we can show you schools and hospitals, and we can show you all highways, and we can show you all kinds of things that were done in the country. We have physical, visible evidence of what we did in this country and how people prospered under People's Partnership Government. What have you got to show?
Nothing.
What have you got to show? What have you got to show? So, blame Kamala. Continue to blame Kamala. Right? Continue to blame Kamala. Continue to blame the PP. But that conversation, as of this moment, is over. The conversation is now, what can you do or what have you done for the benefit of the people of Trinidad and Tobago? Madam Speaker,
well put it.
I want to say that people are in distress in this country. They are in distress. And I do hope and pray that the government is not taking the people for granted, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I want to tell the government to break this analysis paralysis mode, which has become a cultural characteristic of the PNM government. I want to tell them to remove the disincentives to development in an era in which they may not be able to give additional incentives.
Member for Tabakit, your speaking time is now.
Thank you, ma'am.
Member for San Fernando East.
Madam Speaker, I want to thank you for recognizing me, Madam Speaker, and I also want to thank you for the opportunity to join in and contribute to this debate on the Appropriation Bill 2017. Madam Speaker, this is my third Budget Debate 2017. This is my third budget debate, Madam Speaker. And along with my colleagues, I would like the opportunity to congratulate the Minister of Finance and his team, Madam Speaker, for his presentation of a very responsible 2018 budget. Madam Speaker, I'd also like to extend my gratitude to the Minister of Planning for her close and diligent work throughout the financial year, Madam Speaker, in assisting the Ministry of Finance in planning and coming up with this budget. Madam Speaker, I think it's appropriate at this time, coming after the member for Tabakit, to speak to the status of the private developers applying for certificates of income tax exemptions for the construction of low-cost housing. Madam Speaker, these developers would have expressed significant confidence in this government in partnering in the construction of low-cost housing in Trinidad and Tobago, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I have 4 developers, and I would like to congratulate them. Lange Holdings Limited of Montrose Place, Lange Park, Chaguanas. West Hills Development Limited, Caribbean Housing Limited, and Madam Speaker, Mr. Surujrattan Rambachan, our colleague right here, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, at least 24 persons in this House are expressing confidence in this government, and the member for Tabakit is one of them, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, may I also remind the member for Tabakit that the PP ran 5 deficit budgets. Madam Speaker, the member for Tabakit wasn't concerned at that point in time. It didn't seem so. Madam Speaker, may I remind that when the UNC came into office, in their first year of office, they sent home almost 5,000 contract workers, Madam Speaker. 10,000 by December, Madam Speaker. Tabakit wasn't concerned about that. Madam Speaker, concerning the Keats-Subero article, the member of Tabakit needs to acquaint himself with wit and satire, Madam Speaker. And other literary devices. And speaking of experiments, Madam Speaker, the biggest experiment, the biggest failed experiment that this country has seen was the PP government between 2010 and 2015. Madam Speaker, we now have to steady the ship. Madam Speaker, I must also express on behalf of the people of San Fernando East to really thank the Honorable Prime Minister for his strength and fortitude in leading this government and this country at this time. And Madam Speaker, as I speak about the members about the constituency of San Fernando East, I also have to signal that it is truly an honor to represent a noble and decent people that make up the constituency of San Fernando East. And Madam Speaker, in this budget year, there are 3 projects, and I must in particular express my gratitude to the respective ministers. Madam Speaker, I must say thank you to the Minister of Sport for taking charge of the golf club and the staff club at St. Madeleine, which is located in San Fernando East. Madam Speaker, this facility once belonged to Caroni and was not available to the general public. It was just available to the managers of Caroni 1975 Limited. Madam Speaker, I remember back in the day, not everybody could use the facility. And as a young person, I would travel to that facility and run in and jump in the pool and, of course, being thrown out. So now, Madam Speaker, I want to say that my wish is that this initiative of the Ministry of Sport can now allow for young people of San Fernando East, of Princestown, of Moruga. They can now be exposed to the game of golf. They can now be exposed to tennis. They can now be exposed to swimming. And Madam Speaker, I have noticed that the leader of the opposition takes strong objection to the game of golf. And she spoke quite disparagingly about this initiative. But Madam Speaker, while at the Ministry of Public Administration, I came across a document. It was an MOU, Madam Speaker, between the Ministry of Housing and CPEP Company Limited. And that MOU was signed in 2014, and it was for the development and maintenance of this facility. And Madam Speaker, I wonder if the member for Siparia knows that CPEP spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to maintain that facility. And Madam Speaker, to maintain that facility so that one of her ministers and his friends could learn to play the game of golf to the exclusion of all others.
Who is that? Name them.
The minister is a constituent. Madam Speaker, I also want to thank the Minister of Community Development. I want to thank the Minister of Community Development for coming into the constituency and doing some improvement works to the Pleasantville Community Center, as well as to construct the new Taradale Community Center, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, let me now turn to the Ministry of Housing and report on the activities of the Ministry of Housing over the course of the year. Madam Speaker, it is useful to restate that the Ministry carries out the National Housing Policy and is mandated to provide quality, affordable housing solutions for the citizens of this country. It carries out its mandate by reference to the three pillars of affordability, accessibility, and the improvement to the standard of living and the quality of life for citizens. Madam Speaker, the Ministry of Housing is not just about building houses, like some on the other side would want you to believe. Madam Speaker, it's really about affordable shelter and the delivery of affordable housing solutions. And the Ministry has a number of programs, whether it be the grants program, squatter regularization, the affordable mortgage programs, Madam Speaker, to assist all citizens on their own in getting them to affordable shelter. Madam Speaker, let me turn to the Home Improvement Grant. The Home Improvement Grant, the Ministry focused on the vulnerable citizens and offers a $15,000 grant so that citizens can improve their standard of living. It is really geared towards the low-income earners, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, during fiscal 2017, as at September the 30th, 705 grants were distributed to needy low-income families, Madam Speaker, for 100% utilization. Madam Speaker, the program, we have improved the efficiency in running the program, and we have improved the time between the application and the distribution of the grant. Madam Speaker, we will continue to ensure equity in the delivery of this program so that grants can now be distributed all across Trinidad and Tobago and not just in the south and central regions as happened in between the years 2010 to 2015. Madam Speaker, we thank God that our country was spared the devastating effects of Hurricanes Irma and Maria. And we sympathize with our CARICOM neighbors. Madam Speaker, we did, however, experience the adverse effects of Tropical Storm Brett and other periods of inclement weather during fiscal 2017. And Madam Speaker, there is a $15,000 emergency grant, the Emergency Shelter Relief Grant offered by the Ministry, that provides assistance to the affected families. It provides assistance so that immediately on receipt of the grant, that low-income, needy, and affected family can begin to start some form of repair. Madam Speaker, during fiscal 2017, the Ministry provided 64 emergency shelter relief grants. 24 grants were provided to victims of fire. 37 grants were provided to victims of natural hazards and flooding, inclement weather, etc. And 3 to persons who experienced landslips. And Madam Speaker, on the receipt of these grants, those needy families were able to start the rebuilding process. Madam Speaker, the Ministry also provides matching home improvement and home construction subsidies. Through the Neighborhood Upgrading Program, which is supported by an IDB loan, the loan and program it comes to an end in December 2017. Madam Speaker, over the past year, I'm happy to report that 317 families received home improvement subsidies and 249 families received home construction subsidies. Madam Speaker, these grant and subsidy initiatives are really geared towards the low-income families. And Madam Speaker, the grants and subsidies to the tunes of tens of millions of dollars really go a long way to improving the living conditions of these families. But more than that, they also impact the lives of the small contractors, the small hardwares, Madam Speaker, who also benefit, and they're allowed to participate in the economy through the application and the implementation of these grants programs. Madam Speaker, let me turn now to the Accelerated Housing Program, our most popular program. Madam Speaker, the Accelerated Housing Program is a product of P&M policy and came into being in 2002. Back then, Madam Speaker, the P&M recognized that government had a responsibility to assist low and middle income earners who would not otherwise have been able to purchase a home on the open market with affordable housing solutions. This government, as with the last P&M government, Madam Speaker, understands only too well that shelter is not simply about distributing a home to a family, but it is also a catalyst for alleviating poverty, reducing crime, empowering our citizens, and improving the quality of life. And Madam Speaker, at this point in time, I'd like to say thank you to the new man, the chairman of the HDC, and the board of directors of the HDC. And I'd also like to thank all the new men and women who have joined the HDC and those who are contributing to implementing our housing program, Madam Speaker. Well, Madam Speaker, the leader of the opposition had quite a number of disparaging things to say about this government's administration of the housing program. And Madam Speaker, allow me to take them one by one. The member for Separia said not once, but a record 5 times, they have not built one single house in 2 years. Madam Speaker, in the last month, the HDC would have sent out mass emails to everyone on the database, 174,000 of them, to show what we have been doing over the past year. And Madam Speaker, in particular, we showed the housing developments that would have been started by this administration in Gomez Trace, in River Runs Through, in particular in River Runs Through in Arima, Madam Speaker. And in the video, you know, they showed footage of all the units that are presently built, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, close to 174,000 people on the database now know the member for Separia's affinity for the untruth. Madam Speaker.
48.6.
If you could just restate that in another way and you can move on.
Madam Speaker, 174 persons now know that the member for Separia does not know what she is talking about. But Madam Speaker, I also had the opportunity to pull the records, the construction records of the PP's record of building and the completion of housing units. And Madam Speaker, the first 3 housing projects started by the PP government was Fairfield Oasis and Cypress Gardens. Madam Speaker, they came into office in May 2010. And let me now read for you the delivery record of the PP. In 2011, Madam Speaker, no housing units delivered. In 2012, no housing units delivered. Madam Speaker, in 2013, they started to get a few housing units completed in Cypress Gardens. Madam Speaker, it means that only late into their third year did they start to complete housing units. Madam Speaker, the member for Saparia further does not know what she is talking about.
Well put it, man.
Madam Speaker, the member for Saparia also said that we terminated work at several HDC estates. Madam Speaker, this is also untrue. Not only are we continuing the construction of all the estates, Madam Speaker, we have restarted work on housing development started pre-2010, as far back as 2005, Madam Speaker, left to rot by the PP government. Madam Speaker, the member for Saparia said that 8 out of 10 persons want to buy a house and not rent. Madam Speaker, I recognize that it is a dream of many persons to own their own home. Similarly, I understand that it is a dream of many persons to own their own car. But that is simply not the reality when considering the financial circumstances of many persons, Madam Speaker. Many persons are not in a financial position to own their own homes or own their own car. And Madam Speaker, the rental option is the only viable option at the time until they improve their financial circumstances. Madam Speaker, it is about safe and secure shelter, and not so much about owning the home. The member for Saparia also says that her government is about, it believes in a home-owning democracy. But Madam Speaker, may I remind the member for Saparia that the accelerated housing program was born out of PNM policy. So too was the rent-to-own program, Madam Speaker, and TTMF's affordable mortgage programs. Madam Speaker, during their tenure in office, the People's Partnership raised the maximum household income ceiling from $25,000 to $45,000. So which owners or which citizens were they looking after in producing their home ownership democracy? The rich? The rich? Madam Speaker, we in the PNM believe in a right to adequate housing democracy. We believe in a right to a roof over your head democracy, Madam Speaker, whether it be rental accommodation or outright purchase. Madam Speaker, member for Saparia said the PNM intends to keep persons in bondage by renting. Madam Speaker, again, these housing programs were born out of PNM policy, geared towards getting persons who would not have otherwise been able to purchase a home to get a home. The rent-to-own program, the affordable mortgage program, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the member for Saparia said the return to the old model of asking non-builders to build could result in the disbandment of the HDC through 1,400 public officers on the breadline. Madam Speaker, I don't even know what that means, but it sounds like scaremongering to me. Madam Speaker, the HDC still has a significant role to play in the design, in receiving applications, in the new housing initiatives, Madam Speaker. The private sector is now being called upon simply to fund the construction. Madam Speaker, the member for Saparia said, government is handing over the housing portfolio to individuals in the private sector. Well, Madam Speaker, governments past and present have always hired private contractors to construct housing units in government's housing program. With these further incentives, Madam Speaker, we now offer contractors and developers. We are asking the private sector to fund the construction. Where in the past, Madam Speaker, government would have provided all the funding. The HDC will still be involved in the design, pricing, and allocation of applicants to the constructed units. So it still is a partnership between the public sector and the private sector, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the member for Saparia said private developers to be registered by a new committee chaired by the PM, and that reeks of political interference. And Madam Speaker, the significance of this government's new housing initiative, as the member for Tabakik just indicated, there is a long bureaucracy in obtaining statutory and regulatory approvals. Madam Speaker, the Prime Minister will chair a committee of all the regulatory agencies to treat with the quick processing of regulatory approvals. Another misrepresentation, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, let's talk about the housing construction program over the last 2 years. And Madam Speaker, it is necessary to put things into perspective, into context as it relates to funding of the government's housing program over the last 2 years as compared with the PP's tenure in office. Madam Speaker, do you know that the PP's first 2 years in office, they spent $1.2 billion in the development program in housing at the HDC alone? In 2011, they spent $570 million. In 2012, they spent $528 million. Over the 5-year period, Madam Speaker, they spent $4.4 billion. Madam Speaker, by comparison, we have had a significant reduction in revenues, Madam Speaker. We have had to spend, in 2016, $165 million, and in 2017, $231 million. So that, Madam Speaker, when they speak about performance, especially in the housing sector, one must consider the funding arrangements. But Madam Speaker, that is not to make any excuse at all, because at the ministry, and I have to thank the Permanent Secretary, members and staff of the ministry, for all adopting the motto that we must do much more now with much less. Madam Speaker, for fiscal 2017, the HCC completed work on 4 housing developments in Malik, Fairfield, Victoria Keys, Indigo Martin, and Exchange in Couva, for a total of 1,089 housing units.
As the Minister of National Security.
Madam Speaker, I'm being disturbed by a member for Caroni East.
For Caroni East, could you kindly, thank you very much. Member for
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we also restarted, and we were able to restart all the HCC's stalled projects, stalled between the years 2010 to 2015. Madam Speaker, some of these projects have been started up to 12 years ago. Madam Speaker, we believe that these unfinished stalled developments must go to those for whom they were being built. Madam Speaker, we have resumed work on Real Springs in Valsayn, View Fort, St. James, Lakeview in Point Fortin, and Carson Field, and Malabar in Arima. Madam Speaker, the HEC has also started work on new developments in Bonaire South, Corinth, Trestrail, and Maruga. The HEC now has a total of 23 developments under construction at various stages in construction, with a total yield of about 2,600 housing units, and that would cost to complete about $2.7 billion, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the HEC will continue to play its part to stimulate the economy and to create much-needed employment for the tradesmen, unskilled workers, and the local economy that it can stimulate. Key distributions, Madam Speaker. For fiscal 2017, we were able to distribute 1,258 housing units to deserving families, many of them going last year, Christmas time, Madam Speaker, in our 1,000 Homes by Christmas initiative. Madam Speaker, there were much more than key distribution ceremonies. We invited members of the private sector, service providers, Flow, Digicel, as well as Court, Standard, etc., to come and speak to the key recipients to assist them in getting their homes running. Madam Speaker, the Ministry of Housing intends to allocate and distribute an additional 500 to 700 units by December 2017. Madam Speaker, I must also remind this Honourable House that it was a PNM government that took the policy decision to approve a 10% allocation to members of the Joint Protective Services for all public housing distributions. And as promised, Madam Speaker, we restarted the Joint Protective Services Housing Committee, which comprises of representatives of all the various arms of the protective services, along with members from the National Ministry of National Security. The committee, Madam Speaker, coordinates to ensure that members of the protective services who are most in need are able to secure safe and comfortable accommodation according to the policy. Since February 2017, Madam Speaker, the committee has convened and begun its work, and for fiscal 2017, 118 members of the protective services have been allocated housing. And we will continue, Madam Speaker, in fiscal 2018 to ensure that the members of the protective services receive their just allocation. Madam Speaker, I turn to the issue of revenue collection. Having regard to our massive shortfall in funding at the HTC, Madam Speaker, the HTC has had to turn to other sources of revenue generation. And Madam Speaker, the HTC continues to work very closely with the TTMF on its Mortgage Caravan initiative, which seeks to ensure and encourage householders who are on license to occupy agreements and RTO agreements, rent-to-own agreements, Madam Speaker, to convert their accounts to mortgages according to the terms of their agreements. Over fiscal 2017, Madam Speaker, the HTC has converted 843 LTO and RTO accounts. These conversions brought in $317 million. And since the start of the initiative, Madam Speaker, the HTC would have collected over $550 million in mortgage conversions, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, this money goes a long way in funding government's housing program. Madam Speaker, we will continue to step up our efforts to convert some 4,000 accounts and receive some $2.4 billion in outstanding revenue so that we can complete our outstanding projects. Madam Speaker, I turn now to delinquencies. It was revealed in April of this year that the HTC was owed arrears from the rental payments from tenants to the tune of $106 million. Since then, Madam Speaker, during fiscal 2017, the HTC has put some improved measures in place to reduce the occurrence of delinquent payments. And notwithstanding the amounts owed to the HTC still being relatively high, Madam Speaker, the HTC was able to collect $103 million on the delinquent accounts, Madam Speaker. In fiscal 2018, the HTC will continue in its efforts to reduce the delinquency rates and ensure that tenants continue to pay their monthly rents on time. And, Madam Speaker, the HTC will continue to take its revenue collection efforts very seriously. This is the way we are going to fund our housing program as well as our maintenance program in the years to come. I turn to TTMF, Madam Speaker. In February 2017, the Ministry of Housing carried out a 2017 budget measure announced by the Minister of Finance to make residential mortgages more affordable to a greater number of citizens. The effect of this measure was to expand the affordable mortgages program offered by the TTMF. In fiscal 2017, Madam Speaker, 332 persons would have been able to access the 5% mortgage facility, and 621 persons would have been able to access the 2% mortgage facility. Madam Speaker, by comparison with the previous government, between the entire period of 2011 to 2015, for those 4 years, Madam Speaker, under the People's Partnership, in the 2% mortgage program, for the 4 years cumulatively, Madam Speaker, the TTMF was only able to provide 357 loans. Madam Speaker, you compare 357 loans over a 4-year period under the PP to 474 loans, Madam Speaker, in 2016 alone under the PNM, and 621, Madam Speaker, alone in 2017 under the PNM. Almost all of these persons, Madam Speaker, accessing TTMF mortgages would have been the beneficiaries of HDC housing. And Madam Speaker, again, I'm referring to the member for Siparia indicating in her response to the budget that her government believes in a home-owning democracy. But Madam Speaker, isn't it inconsistent to say that your government believes in a home-owning democracy when the numbers show that only a very small number of individuals acquired mortgages, and there's less persons, a small number of persons, were able to get the deeds to their properties, Madam Speaker, during the period 2011 to 2015. Madam Speaker, on the same topic of revenue collection, and this may be a topic of interest to Caroni East. Madam Speaker, we would have completed and launched very proudly the Victoria Keys housing development in Diego Martin. Madam Speaker, if you recall, this project was started way back in 2005 and was supposed to cost just about $250 million to be completed for housing for the low-income persons in society. In the end, Madam Speaker, the People's Partnership Government changed the scope of the project to incorporate a swimming pool, multi-story car parks complete with elevators, a tennis court, a clubhouse, etc. The project ended up costing the taxpayer just about $652 million, Madam Speaker, an escalation from $250 million for low-income earners to $652 million. So, Madam Speaker, this government took the decision to offer the units of Victoria Keys for sale on the open market. And in the last 7 months, the HCC would have realized sales to the value of $106 million. And Madam Speaker, the proceeds of the sales of these apartments now allow the HDC to complete long outstanding projects like View Fort and other projects intended for the low and middle income earners. Madam Speaker, in fiscal 2018, we will step up our efforts to have all these units sold so that we can receive all the revenue possible. And very soon we'll be inviting, Madam Speaker, real estate agents to come in and assist the HDC in selling the units. Let me just quickly mention the HDC's debt to contractors. Madam Speaker, when I assumed the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development, I learned that the HDC was owing contractors up to $800 million. Madam Speaker, with our significant efforts at revenue collection and revenue generation, we are able now to pay all these contractors, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, let me now turn to report on the Land for the Landless program. The member for Siparia spoke of the Land for the Landless program as being a hallmark program of her government. Madam Speaker, the Land for the Landless program was very simply a residential lots program, very simply. Madam Speaker, it is a program that would distribute to successful applicants residential lots at a subsidized cost on the condition that they construct a dwelling unit in a certain period of time, Madam Speaker. And so a service lots program is not a stranger to Trinidad and Tobago. In the past governments would have done it very, very successfully. For example, Madam Speaker, in Union Hall. Because governments past and present, Madam Speaker, recognize that there are certain persons who want a plot of land because they are so ambitious and so industrious that they would want to construct their housing units themselves. And Madam Speaker, the Land for the Landless program has had its genesis in 2012 up until 2015. And Madam Speaker, I'm not sure if the member for Siparia knows that up until we assumed office in 2015, not one single applicant had received a deed of lease for their land. Not one. Madam Speaker, shortly after I assumed office, I caused a review to be done of the program. And the committee reviewing the program was made up of persons employed at the Ministry of Housing. And Madam Speaker, what they reported was a flawed and failed program. Madam Speaker, there were apparent beneficiaries in that program signing agreements for land with no deposits having been first made. On the other hand, Madam Speaker, there were apparent beneficiaries making deposits and paying installments without having first signed an agreement. Madam Speaker, it was a strict term of the agreement that beneficiaries were to construct a housing unit within 2 years. Yet there were apparent beneficiaries with no source of income or an income so low that they could not even purchase the land. Madam Speaker, worst of all, the state of being landless was a main criterion for selection to the program, yet the vast majority of apparent beneficiaries or their co-applicants were not subjected to title searches to ensure landlessness. Madam Speaker, the program was fraught with inconsistencies. There was little or no due diligence, and there was a complete failure in the program's execution. So, Madam Speaker, it leads me to believe that the real aim for this Land for the Landless program was really the handing out of contracts for the development of the service lots and not the allocation of lots to those who need it most, the beneficiaries. And Madam Speaker, that's the fundamental difference between the UNC and the PNM. In programs, Madam Speaker, in programs such as this, the contractor is the main focus of UNC policy, where on the other hand, the citizen seeking shelter opportunities is the center of PNM policy. So, Madam Speaker, this year, Cabinet approved the termination of that program. However, Madam Speaker, notwithstanding the termination, government has recognized the expectations of some 418 selected applicants who were at an advanced stage in the program, and we have contacted all of them with a view to taking them forward, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, at the same time, Cabinet also approved a new housing program to be implemented by the ministry. And Madam Speaker, this housing program is called the Aided Self-Help Housing Program, which will in essence replace the Land for the Landless program. Madam Speaker, the fundamental difference between this program and the last is that this one is planned all the way to the end and focuses on the beneficiary from the submission of a successful application all the way, Madam Speaker, walking side by side, assisting in the selection of housing designs, pre-approved plans, technical assistance in obtaining regulatory approvals, assisting in the supplying of a pool of pre-qualified small contractors, and further assistance with quality control and project management towards the completion of the housing unit. Madam Speaker, the program will be divided into a number of phases. We expect to be able to distribute about 1,000 lots in the first cycle, and these lots will be offered to successful applicants at 30% the market value to be determined by the Commissioner of Valuations. And Madam Speaker, beneficiaries will be required to build in 2 to 3 years. The first phase, Madam Speaker, will be the application phase, where citizens will be invited to apply to the program, and the usual criteria would apply, Madam Speaker. You must be 21 years of age, you, your spouse, or your co-applicant must not be the owner or co-owner of property in Trinidad and Tobago, etc. Madam Speaker, in the second phase, beneficiaries will be selected, agreements entered into, and deposits made, and deeds drawn up. In the third phase, beneficiaries will be educated and given a roadmap to housing that will show the way from deed of lease through to the submission of designs to town and country and to the construction phase. Madam Speaker, they will be aided and assisted by the Ministry of Housing through these very critical stages. Madam Speaker, in the fourth phase, the ministry would assist the beneficiary towards the start of construction. Madam Speaker, this program will also be available to persons who may possess land but still require some assistance from the ministry, some technical assistance, in terms of getting pre-approved housing plans, assistance in taking their approvals towards town and country. They will be a pool of pre-qualified contractors would also be made available to that applicant, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the ministry has on offer pre-approved housing designs with units that could cost as little as $300,000. We expect this program to be a significant success, and we expect to do at least one more cycle of at least 500 lots. Madam Speaker, in the first cycle, we will do about 1,000 lots. Madam Speaker, this program, we expect to ease the burden of someone, ease the burden and ease the demand on government housing.
Will the Minister give way to a question? Will applicants who have applied under the Land for the Landless program be taken into account in this program that you are proceeding with?
Madam Speaker, to answer the member's question, all citizens would be invited to apply. All citizens would reapply. And Madam Speaker, we would expect to open the application period for just about 1 month or 2 months. Madam Speaker,
you are
over. Madam Speaker, I'm not giving way. Madam Speaker,
5 minutes.
Another program we expect to implement over fiscal 2018, Madam Speaker, is the Home Ownership 101 program. Madam Speaker, this is a new project. At the Ministry, Madam Speaker, we believe that the road to home ownership outside the provisions of state-built housing units at the HCC could prove to be a very difficult and convoluted process. And Madam Speaker, we believe that many citizens do not understand the process or feel blocked by the bureaucracy of the regulatory agencies, as was stated by the member for Tabakit. Madam Speaker, they do not understand the financing process and the financial qualification criteria for mortgages. In this light, Madam Speaker, the Ministry will produce a complete housing manual that will explain in very simple terms everything to do with housing, from dealing with real estate agents, the regulatory agencies, Madam Speaker, mortgage companies, landlord and tenant law, the cost of home ownership versus the cost of rental, etc. And Madam Speaker, we intend for this manual to be very comprehensive, very popular, and explain in very simple terms all matters related to housing. Madam Speaker, I turn now to the squatter regularization program. The squatter regularization program, Madam Speaker, has continued apace. The LSA has increased its capacity to process certificates of comfort. Certificates of comfort have been distributed throughout the year, and at present we have 324 certificates that await distribution. All applications for certificates of comfort would be processed, investigated, and determined, all applications, Madam Speaker, by January 2018. Madam Speaker, the squatter regularization program is a 3-stage process for those occupants of state lands in designated areas prior to 1998. The first stage, Madam Speaker, is the application and receipt of a certificate of comfort. Government then upgrades the infrastructure to these sites to full approval. And the second and third stage, Madam Speaker, is the grant of a statutory lease and then a deed of lease to the certificate holder who has satisfied all the requirements under the State Land Regularization of Tenure Act 1998. Madam Speaker, I now have the privilege to report that since the coming into force of the Act and the squatter regularization program, this government is now able to grant statutory leases to certificate of comfort holders in exchange for a premium. Madam Speaker, Cabinet recently approved that the premium be 25% of the market value of the lands, the infrastructural cost to be borne by the government. Madam Speaker, this premium will be charged to all certificate of comfort holders who have fulfilled all their requirements under the Act. The statutory lease is for a period of 30 years, and persons who have received these statutory leases will have a period of 30 years to pay for their land. Madam Speaker, once the land is paid for...
Member for San Fernando, is your 45 minutes announcement. You're entitled to 10 more minutes if you wish to avail yourself. Please proceed.
Madam Speaker, once the land is paid for, the beneficiaries will then be assigned a deed of lease for 199 years. Over the next fiscal year, Madam Speaker, we will begin to issue these statutory leases to those qualified occupants in some 21 sites across Trinidad. We have, at present, Madam Speaker, over 1,000 leases that can be issued in the next year. Madam Speaker, as I turn now to UDCOT, and Madam Speaker, the UDCOT, notwithstanding this country's economic challenges, has been very busy in fiscal 2017. And Madam Speaker, UDCOT has been able to prudently manage and keep the cost down of the construction projects all over Trinidad and Tobago. And Madam Speaker, my colleagues, fellow ministers on this side, would get the opportunity to speak of all their projects that the UDCOT has been project managing. But Madam Speaker, just to mention, the St. Joseph, Besson Street and Maracas police stations that have all been completed. Madam Speaker, the Mayaro Fire Station, the Government Campus Plaza. Madam Speaker, the Brian Lara Cricket Academy, completed, Madam Speaker. The refurbishment of the Hyatt Regency, Mount Lambert and Akbar Trace community centers that have been recently started, along with Cantaro, Taradale, Las Lomas, etc. Madam Speaker, work continues on the Arima Hospital, and the Minister of Health will speak to that, the Point Fortin Hospital, the Diego Martin Health Center, Chaguanas Health Center, etc., Madam Speaker. And in fiscal 2018, Madam Speaker, UDCOT will continue to deliver these projects under cost and on time. Madam Speaker, with respect to the Silwick Sugar Industry Labour Welfare Committee, there was recently appointed a board at Silwick, Madam Speaker, and I can give the assurance that all outstanding matters, Madam Speaker, deeds of lease, releases, outstanding payments to all of Silwick shareholders will be settled shortly. Madam Speaker, at the Ministry, in fiscal 2018, we also intend to complete a project at 43 Independence Square. Madam Speaker, that project is the shell of a building, Madam Speaker. The project will be refurbished and will provide a space, an incubator for entrepreneurs in the Port of Spain area, and it will be managed by the board of the Eastside Plaza and the New City Mall, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, at East Port of Spain Development Company, that company continues to execute small to medium infrastructural upgrading projects to the communities of East Port of Spain, and very soon for fiscal 2018, Madam Speaker, we will meet with all the stakeholders in East Port of Spain to plan a next phase of infrastructural upgrading work. So, Madam Speaker, in conclusion, the future is bright at the Ministry of Housing and in the housing sector. I see Oropuch East nodding in approval, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, these new programs, aided self-help, squatter regularization program, Madam Speaker, and the new initiatives for developers and traders in houses, Madam Speaker, the future is bright. Madam Speaker, and we would take the opportunity at the Ministry of Housing to report to the national community throughout the year on all the achievements that we have made and all the new initiatives that would be available for citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. Madam Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity.
Member for Princestown.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to be able to contribute to the Financial Appropriation Bill 2017-2018. Madam Speaker, first, let me take the opportunity to congratulate my colleagues and the Leader of the Opposition for sterling performance. Madam Speaker, I often like to infuse what I coin as young people's language into my presentation. And I would like to introduce two terms, the word lit and the word slay. Madam Speaker, the young people would say Mrs. Prasad Bises's performance, the member for Siparia, leader for the opposition, was lit, in that it was spot on, it was an excellent contribution. And she slayed the presentation of the member for Diego Martin Northeast, in that she was able to dissect every issue that continues to affect the people of Trinidad and Tobago in such a way that it resonates with the young people of our country. Madam Speaker, in rebutting a few points from my colleague from San Fernando East, he indicated, the honourable member that is, that the MP for Siparia, leader for the opposition, spoke disparagingly about golf. Madam Speaker, the member for Siparia never spoke disparagingly about golf. What she spoke disparagingly about was the waste, mismanagement and corruption that this government presides over while taking bread and butter out of the mouths of our citizens. That is what she spoke about. She spoke about the vanity projects. And you know, Madam Speaker, the member for San Fernando East, I felt very embarrassed for him, having to go through a list of projects that was completed by the People's Partnership, where they just had to turn keys. And the only project that he really oversaw was the refurbishing of the Hyatt. That is his claim to fame. Madam Speaker, I think after the minister's dismal performance that the Prime Minister may wish to consider changing the name from Ministry of Housing and Urban Development to Ministry of Housing and No Development. Madam Speaker, if I had to describe this budget presentation, for me, it will be best described as a cop-out. It is a missed opportunity once again by this PNM, Rowley-led administration to put forward a real, tangible, productive and innovative trajectory that would see a small island, well-resourced economy move from old talk to sustainable development. Madam Speaker, having spent 2 years in office, this administration has been characterized by the chronicles of absentee leadership, stories of poor governance and incompetence, the case of fake oil, and fairy tales. Madam Speaker, I think it came as a surprise to most people in this country that the Minister of Finance opening salvo on Monday was not once upon a time. Madam Speaker, the Minister spent half of his time driving, or let me put it in a more enjoyable way for the Minister. Seeing that the Minister likes yachts, he sailed this budget presentation of over $50 billion, predicating his comments with misrepresentations of the past. Madam Speaker, this budget reflected what is known in the medical field as psychological manipulation. Instead of progressive policies, innovation for growth, and the creation of contemporary revenue streams, we were presented with a balancing act of major fake news with an iota of reality. Madam Speaker, allow me to provide a framework and context by looking at the overview of the economy. It is no secret that our economy continues to be heavily dependent on oil and gas. I think that's a point that most, if not all of my colleagues make on both sides of the House. Those supplies from time to time experience crushing and debilitating price shocks, whether due to domestic or external pressures. Madam Speaker, it is in that context that having experienced significant revenue loss in this industry, that today we are seeking to balance the books by bringing down spending. However, as the Minister of Finance engaged in the area of financial psychological manipulation, he raised a very interesting area of a false economy. Madam Speaker, false economy, in economic terms, truly characterizes what this government has engaged in. However, what did we see, Madam Speaker? We saw that the Minister of Finance attempted to utilize an area of economics that was totally misrepresented in the context that was presented to this Honourable House. Madam Speaker, false economy. A false economy, Madam Speaker, is where spending is suppressed in critical areas to show savings or structural adjustments purposely on the books, which in fact will actually cost you twice the amount later down the road. Madam Speaker, after throwing shade, as the young people would say, the minister attempted to reconcile government spending and government borrowing with a path of growth. Madam Speaker, I turn to Trinidad Express editorial of April 29, 2017, which read the following gravity of our situation. Moody's rating agency and the International Monetary Fund produced particularly unsettling reports. But this administration is complacency incarnate. Madam Speaker, I'll repeat that. The Express editorial says this administration is complacency incarnate. It goes on to say, for 19 months, not even the drop in annual energy revenue from 19 billion to 8 billion, as indicated by the Prime Minister, has steered them towards new foreign earnings, moving Moody's also to call for structural reform that enhances economic diversification. Madam Speaker, the editorial goes on to say, instead choosing the easy way, the government relies heavily on borrowing to finance deficits. Debt expected to be 63% of GDP by year's end. Debt servicing to US $460.1 million in 2020. Not surprisingly, in its downgrade, Standard & Poor's cited deterioration of the country's debt burden and interest burden over 2017-2020. Madam Speaker, it further says, but the government will keep borrowing. Moody's expecting debt to rise to almost 70% of GDP by 2019, and with the current downgrades, interest rates will rise for future borrowings. More and more debt, higher and higher debt servicing, Trinidad and Tobago is walking into the debt trap. We will not have revenues to avoid it. Senior lecturer of the UWI Economics, Roger Hossain, warns the outlook is dismal. Apart from BP gas projects, Angeline, Juniper, and Truck, all of which thanks to the People's Partnership Government, where will the growth come from? And the UWI Economics lecturer Valmiki Arjun says, we have a pascha for piling on additional debt when we face a revenue shortfall. But we are not spending all of it responsibly to enhance productivity and revenue by boosting growth sectors and economic infrastructure. Therefore, Madam Speaker, when I heard the Minister of Finance speak of the loan from the Andean Development Bank, I expected to learn that the loan, if not in part or the whole, was being utilized for development program or the social sector investment program. Instead, Madam Speaker, $2 billion down the drain in recurrent expenditure. But that is P&M logic, Madam Speaker. That is P&M economics. So the minister comes and he complains about putting some in the kitty, like what the People's Partnership did when we borrowed. You see, Madam Speaker, when we borrowed for capital investment. We borrowed for PSIP projects. We understood, Madam Speaker, that also that those borrowings, if put into the HSF fund, would also have returns, and they are seeing the benefits of that today. But the Honourable Minister, Madam Speaker, he sought to complain that we were borrowing to save. Madam Speaker, those same borrowings that we saved with, they are spending today. Madam Speaker, that is the double standards and hypocrisy. Madam Speaker, you do not live for today only. If that is this government's philosophy, then God help us. Madam Speaker, the editorial went further, and I quote, the Permanent Secretary in the Finance Ministry, Suzette Leachy, also emphasized government must look at the quality of its debt and says with a worsening debt to GDP ratio, more and more of your revenue will be constrained for debt servicing. You have less and less to grow your economy, finance your projects. Madam Speaker, is that why today we are seeing the economy being stalled and stagnant? Government does not have the vision nor the capacity to focus its attention on capital investment while looking at alternative areas of revenue for recurrent expenditure. Madam Speaker, in their 2017 report, Moody's indicated that the government mostly relied on one-off revenue measures, that without change to our expenditure structure, where wages, subsidies and transfers account for 70% of government spending, the government will continue to use the Heritage and Stabilization Fund. Madam Speaker, what has changed between then and now? Absolutely nothing, Madam Speaker. Things have gotten worse, but then the minister tells us, well, that's okay, they haven't rioted yet, and maybe I'm doing such a grand job, that's why they're not complaining. Madam Speaker, the editorial further indicated that the finance minister is clinging almost for dear life to the stable outlook given by Standard & Poor. Now he is hiring Fitch ratings. The article says, and I quote, if Imbert wants a rosy picture, he should have worked for it over the past 19 months. Madam Speaker, I want the national population and members to listen to this statement very carefully. The article goes on to say, and I quote, instead, he, Imbert, has presided over this country's worst economic contraction in 33 years since 1984. Madam Speaker, this is not a UNC saying this, you know. This is not a leader of the opposition saying this. This is the voice of the people. This is a voice that represents the people of Trinidad and Tobago that is reflecting their views on the handling of the economy by the member for Diego Martin Northeast Minister of Finance. Madam Speaker, on June 29, 2017, in this House, in an answer to a question posed to the minister indicated that the government had hired Fitch at a tune of over $80,000, over $500,000 Trinidad and Tobago dollars, to provide an assessment. Madam Speaker, this is the same Fitch who in a BMI report, Economic Analysis Deficit Financing, will limit private sector credit growth, published June 27. This is what they had to say about the Honourable Minister of Finance. Madam Speaker, they indicated, we maintain our forecast for a shortfall of Trinidad and Tobago dollars 6.2 billion, equal to 3.6% of GDP in financial year 2017. That said, a lack of transparency when it comes to data complicates forecasting the size of Trinidad and Tobago's fiscal shortfall. Monthly finance data has not been provided since August 2016, and the balance sheet summaries provided in recent official publications differ from public statements made by Finance Minister Colm Imbert. Madam Speaker, again I ask, what has changed since then? Is it now we are paying a company to tell us what the Minister of Finance wants to hear? This is a clear case of what we say in local parlance, Madam Speaker, is spinning top in mud. Madam Speaker, permit me to turn to the area of the deception of alternatives and the bankruptcy of inventiveness by this government. Madam Speaker, this budget was one of several contradictions, half-truths and repeated offences. Oh, I really meant promises. Madam Speaker, from all quarters of the society, there is an echoing chorus for the creation of alternative revenue-generating streams. This government appears to be in the business of sound bites and catchy quips, but very short on delivery and implementation. Madam Speaker, I believe that this government is also characterized by what many in our national community have gotten accustomed to, which is every year is next year. So what they do, Madam Speaker, is that the PNM, well known for promises never materialize. They come with the budget presentations, and they say, well, we didn't do it this year, but it's coming next year. So every year is next year. Madam Speaker, the population has gotten so accustomed to that the minister sought to spend so much time saying that 2018 will be a year of delivery. But the people of Trinidad and Tobago know quite differently, Madam Speaker, because we do not believe their words, because they have no action. Madam Speaker, on Monday we heard repeated ideas from 2015 that saw no fruition. We heard borrowed ideas that we anticipate will also have no fruition, and we saw the elimination of several ideas that apparently became stillborn. And Madam Speaker, let us turn to a few of those. Madam Speaker, some of the ideas put forward as alternative revenue-generating streams. Madam Speaker, you will recall in 2015, and I promise you, till the last day I serve as a member of Parliament, I will remind the PNM of this promise that they made to Trinidad and Tobago. In 2015, the Prime Minister went down to South Trinidad, La Brea and Point Fortin. What was a grand plan for that part of Trinidad and Tobago? A plywood factory. 2 years later, Madam Speaker, that has not materialized and nothing has happened. Another failed promise, and as my friend from Aruka Maloney is reminding me, yes, the Prime Minister did promise the plywood factory that has not delivered. Madam Speaker, let us look at another idea that they spoke about. They said that they will look at the downstream sector with respect to the aluminum smelter. Madam Speaker, big song and dance from the Minister of Finance a few months ago. Absolutely no mention of it in budget. Absolutely no mention of it in any of their documents. Another promise that will not materialize. Another failure on the part of the government. Madam Speaker, another alternative that we heard about from the government was the area of reliable, consistent data. Madam Speaker, a data industry would give us the opportunity as an English-speaking, democratic, well-resourced country to provide services for the Caribbean and Latin America and the Caribbean. Madam Speaker, another area where this is another failed promise. Madam Speaker, the issue of online shopping. Madam Speaker, the revenue collection has shown that the government has failed to meet the targets that they have set in the last fiscal year, garnering only 23 million Trinidad and Tobago dollars, yet yielding no significant results in that area, warranting another failure of an alternative. Madam Speaker, to make things worse, and I believe this is what has angered so many in our population, whether it's the economists or the professionals, the housewives, or the country at large, is that the finance minister came in a vacuum with no comprehensive operations. Madam Speaker, I took a short walk while the Minister of Finance spoke because I was so baffled as to why he was putting forward policy measures that had no cohesion. Madam Speaker, I believe that the silence on the lack of success with respect to government's investment with programs like SOCA on the Seas is yet another area where they have failed. Little or no returns on this investment continues to leave the industry floundering. Madam Speaker, this is another ship that has sailed bon voyage like the ocean flower. Madam Speaker, last year prior to the local government election, we were advised of impending local government reform. Much of the local government campaign last year, apart from their campaign on roti, focused on empowering communities through strengthening regional corporations. Madam Speaker, the regional corporations instead have seen severe cuts. There are still no concrete plans for the devolution of power in the local government fraternity. New, unimaginative alternatives, Madam Speaker, saw the disastrous mistake of once more focusing internally. The screaming headline of tax for so on the Trinidad Express, October 3rd, 2017, said it all. Madam Speaker, the Honourable Leader of the Opposition's comments were lit, as the young people would say. It is true they are bankrupt of the intellectual capacity that is needed to steer this country in the right direction. Madam Speaker, he that is good for making excuses is seldom good for anything else. And that is so applicable to members opposite. Madam Speaker, I was jolted into reality when I realized that the Minister of Finance was making contradictory policy announcements to what was announced in the past two and what had occurred in the practice in the last 2 years. Madam Speaker, let us look at the issue of utility rates. The Minister, in effect, has set the stage for the triggering of the RIC to raise water rates and electricity rates. However, the Minister spent no time after four or five ministers of public utilities in a space of just 2 years. The Minister spent no time dealing with the issue of productivity, efficiency, and a reliable source of water, 24 hours. We advise through your own budget documents, WASA has received $58 million less in their allocation, and therefore the issue of efficiency, productivity, and a 24-hour supply, Madam, will not be addressed before or after. Madam Speaker, the Minister focused on the increase on corporation tax to give the impression, as he says, that everyone must play their part in absorbing the burden. Madam Speaker, it is not a surprise, as several of the chambers of commerce have indicated, that this will be transferred on to the consumer and therefore removing the power of the purchasing power from the consumer. Madam Speaker, as a young people would say, spoiler alert. When you win, you really lose. Government's only imaginative policy is to tax Playway and Lotto. It's called taxing your luck, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the issue regarding the imposition of heavy fines on the gaming industry has had perilous and instant effects on the industry, resulting in closures and unemployment. The government has established a joint select committee, which is very well known, to deal with matters regarding the gaming industry. But, Madam Speaker, what have we seen? They have made unilateral decisions already on the industry, therefore overseeing its debt and waiting to preside over its final rights. Madam Speaker, you will recall that there has been a debate on the beverage container bill, Madam Speaker. And before my friend from Port Spain North, who I know wants to get up on a standing order or two. Madam Speaker, instead of focusing on the beverage container bill, which would have helped this country with respect to recycling and climate change, this government has chosen to be selective by not levying on plastic bottles and beverage containers, but have rendered duties
so as not to disappoint, Madam Speaker, 4810, after 2 years, is very disappointing that he continues to read. I can say what I want. You'll be talking soon.
This is Standing Order 4410.
4410.
Okay, members, I believe this is the budget, and I give some leeway in the budget presentations because of the technicalities. Okay, so that members shouldn't read. It's a debate, but I do give allowances for heavy reliance on the notes. Members, I now would like, I believe it's agreed that now is a convenient time for the lunch break. This House now stands suspended and shall resume at 2 o'clock.
He was coming with that.